Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of Reddit Podcast Stories, where today, I'm 19, male, and my girlfriend, who's also 19, broke my anime figures, and it really hurt me inside. I get that they are kind of weird and stuff, but whenever I was still living with my parents, I was going through a really hard time, and collecting that sort of stuff, it just helped me get through everything. Getting a new package in the mail and seeing it just always made me happy. It's only been a couple of years, so obviously I still have all of them, even now that I live on my own. My girlfriend and I got into an argument about moving in together and stuff at my place. Because of lockdown and stuff calming down, we talked about it, but we've only been dating since around January, and she's only lived with her parents, so I didn't know if it was the best idea in my opinion. I told her we should wait a bit longer, and she got really upset with me. I just went outside and calmed down for a bit. She came out with me after a while and said that she's leaving to go back home. We said goodbye, and I went back in the room and I found 2 of my figures broken. I mean, I get that they were dumb or whatever, but they were mine. They meant something to me. They were one of the things that made me happy during some hard times, and she went and broke them. The one on the left is missing its entire body. It's supposed to come apart, but the body part was missing. I've looked for it, but I can't find it anywhere. I guess she either took it with her or threw it away. The other 3 parts are the same one, but they are just broken. It's beyond repair at this point, and I just can't find the other pieces anyway. It's only about $30-ish on this, but it just hurt because they meant something to me, and now they're broken and gone. I feel heartbroken and horrible now. I haven't texted her yet or had any talk with her so far. I don't know what I should do. I just want to ask for the body back on one of them, but I don't know what to say about it. Do I just tell her to give it back? The other one is broken, but I can put the other one back together. Can anybody help me? Update. Basically, me and my now ex-girlfriend got into an argument and she broke my stuff. The good news is that we broke up and I got the body back to one of my figures. I got the body back and I changed the face on it to match my ex-girlfriend's after we broke up. The other one is completely ruined though. After reading the comments on my old post, I knew I wasn't going to stay with her. I still wanted my stuff back though, so I just called her mom and told her what happened, and she said that she would talk to my ex-girlfriend. I explained on the phone with her mom that this was something I really wouldn't accept, and that I would probably be breaking up with her, and at this point, I just want my stuff back. She told me later on to drive to their home and wait outside. I did just that, and my ex-girlfriend just walked out with a few tears in her eyes. Her mom told her that I was going to break up with her for this, and just handed the body back to me and $20 for the other one that she broke. After saying bye, I left and just went home and texted her, explaining that we're over and not to contact me again. She said she was sorry, but I was way too heartbroken and upset to even consider taking her back. I thanked her mom, and that's the last time I spoke to either of them. She literally acted like a kid. She broke my stuff like a kid. I had to go tell her mommy like a kid. Her mommy had to make her fix it like a kid. Yeah, this whole thing was just being childish. Thanks to everyone who left comments, except a few of you. What's wrong with some of you? I really appreciated most of the comments. Big thanks to the person offering to buy me new stuff because they know how it felt to have an ex break their things. But what's wrong with some of you? Like, I know collecting figures and stuff isn't considered normal, but no, I will not throw away my figures. I don't care what you think of my hobby, so you can honestly buzz off. If my future girlfriend doesn't like it, that's her problem, not mine. What she broke is irrelevant. That they were anime figurines is irrelevant. What matters is that she broke OP's belongings. Whether those were toy trains, collectible cards, post stamps, movie posters, anything, she'd have broken them regardless. Never stay with someone who breaks his stuff when they get mad at you. You'll regret it 100% of the time. Am I the jerk for telling my son-in-law's wife she will never take my daughter's place? I lost my daughter Abby 7 years ago. She was married to Scott and had 3 kids with him who are now 11, 12, and 14. Scott and my grandkids stayed part of the family, and last year Scott remarried. His current wife is Beth. We all knew Beth for a few years prior to the wedding, and she was always very friendly, though at times she could be a little pushy. Scott would always handle that though. After they got married, Beth's pushiness got worse, and Scott appears to have lost control. Beth was upset when she dropped my grandkids off one day that we had not added photos of her to our house and commented as such. In our living room, we have a display with photos of our kids and their weddings. She felt her and Scott's wedding photo should be there. She was upset when my grandkids spent Mother's Day with us and our extended family, and we did not include her. Scott wasn't involved either. Mother's Day is a difficult day for him due to a bad relationship with his own mother. But Beth said we should invite her too because she's part of the family, and then she said that she's one of our kids too. I asked her what she meant, and she told me that she is obviously going to be one of our kids now that she's the mother figure to our grandkids. I told Scott what she said, and he was embarrassed and told me he would speak to her. Beth was also upset when my husband posted on Facebook to say something about our kids, and she didn't get mentioned as one of our kids, but as Scott's wife. We mentioned Scott and how wonderful he was to Abby and how wonderful he is as a father. For my grandson's 14th birthday, we were all together and he wanted a mom's side photo. Beth attempted to get into the photo, and when Scott tried to remind her, she said she's part of the family now. He pulled her aside and the photo was taken without her. But she told one of my sons after that she felt like we weren't treating her as a daughter, and then said Scott never treated her as a lesser wife. We saw them a little over Christmas, and Beth was upset that we got them a joint gift for her and Scott instead of getting her one alone. She told me she's tired of feeling like she's not really family, and she said she feels like we always put Abby first when she's here now. I saw red after this, and I told her she could never take my daughter's place, and the fact she ever thought she could is outrageous. She told me the kids call her mom, and they think the world of her, so why wouldn't we? I told her the kids have always called her Beth when I hear them, and she turned around and said that's our fault because the kids should be calling her mom and they don't. She lost it from there. Beth stormed out, and I explained what happened to Scott. He apologized and left the kids with us so he could speak to her. I think they worked it out, but Beth said I was needlessly cruel to imply she's not as good as Abby and doesn't deserve to be our daughter. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. You are Abby's parents and not Scott's. You have a good relationship with him and your grandkids, and that's wonderful, but she is not your family. She's Scott's and a stepmother to your grandkids. She seems to be pushing boundaries and misunderstands that your relationship with Scott is based on the relationship he had with your daughter. You have included Beth in what you are comfortable with, but you are not obligated to treat her like your daughter, and her comments about being the kid's mother and that your daughter is put first, despite having passed, is alarming. Not the jerk. I mean, she sounds unhinged. There's no logic that would suggest she would ever be like a daughter to you, even if your grandkids do consider her a mother figure, now or in the future. That's not a transitive relationship. She's married to your daughter's widower. That's it. There's no family relationship between you and her. If she's pushing the gonzo replace Abby in every aspect of her life agenda consistently, that's honestly kind of crazy and it sounds weird. I would keep my distance as much as possible while maintaining the relationship with the grandkids and meet all her weird suggestions with, "What a strange thing to say." You're the jerk. Let me maybe give you a different perspective. Beth is not trying to take your daughter's place. She's simply walking through the next phase of Scott's life with him. Once you stop seeing her as trying to replace your daughter, you'll be a much less unhappy person. It's not necessary for you to maintain a relationship with Scott. I understand you want to see your grandkids, and that's fair and right. But you're shunning a woman who stepped into a family she didn't create at the invitation of your former son-in-law, your grandkid's father. You're disrespecting Scott by leaving Beth out. She might seem pushy to you, but have you thought about how you come across to her? This goes both ways. Sorry, but either you're the jerk or everyone sucks here. You keep including Scott, but not his new wife as a member of the family. She never asked to take your daughter's place. She asked to be included as a member and valued for herself, not just an extension of Scott. If you aren't up to including her in your lives, fine, but give her credit for wanting to make sure to have space for you. That is the opposite of erasing your family. The adults need to have a whole conversation about how to move forward with everyone comfortably. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or Beth? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for insulting my father's girlfriend and telling her to get out of our lives? My mother was my world. I remember reading books, watching documentaries, and going on road trips with her. She baked my sister and I cookies whenever we were sick. Her and Dad would take us hiking every other week. I still miss her even now. When I was 11 years old, she passed away in an accident. It was the hardest year of my life, and it hasn't gotten easier. 2 years after she passed, my father started dating a woman named Nicole, and 4 years later, they got married. Nicole is younger than my father. After dating Nicole, I saw my father come back into his shell, but it turned into something else. Nicole brought adventure back into his life, but they often went on elaborate trips and frequent nights out. During all of this, I felt neglected. My father slowly stopped taking my sister and I on our weekly hikes. He started speaking less and less over calls, and he even once forgot my mother's birthday. After she came into our lives, I started losing my father. He just wasn't there anymore. One time when my sister and I were home alone, she fell down the stairs and got hurt. It was clear that she needed stitches, so I called my father immediately. Nicole answered the phone, and I told her to give the phone to my father. She refused, saying he was busy, and before I could get another word in, she disconnected the call. I embarrassingly had to ask the neighbor to bring us to urgent care, where my dad later met us. This woman at one point removed my mother's picture from the fire mantle to put up a picture of her and my dad from their trip to Washington. The thing that tipped me over was when she made my father forget about my mother's birthday. Every year, my sister and I go with our father to visit my mother on her birthday. It was an annual tradition even before Nicole entered our lives. Nicole and my father went on a trip to Florida and were supposed to be back 3 days before my mother's birthday. But because this woman is motion sick, my father decided to break the drive back into small intervals to make it easier on her. Because of this, he ended up missing our annual trip. He didn't even call us. Not even a week later, my father has the nerve to tell us about an exciting surprise. Nicole is pregnant. I get angry and tell my father, "You need to knock her up when you can't even be here for us?" I then look at Nicole and tell her that she's disgusting and she's a jerk and needs to get out of our lives. My father gets angry and yells at me to go to my room. Later, my grandpa unexpectedly came over to pick me up. My father didn't text me anything. Even as I left, he wouldn't even look at me. It's been 2 days, and I'm still at my grandparents' home. I feel ashamed for saying what I said, yet I don't feel overwhelming regret. Am I the jerk? You didn't say your age, but I hope you can move out soon. OP, I appreciate it. I'm 17, and I've spoken to school counselors too. No one is willing to help me. I've tried talking with my dad about how I feel way before my outburst, but it always ends with, "It happened years ago. It's time to move on." I don't even know what that means. My sister can't get help either, so I'm trying to peacefully exist for her. I'm 17, my sister is 13, my dad's 44, and Nicole is 34. Has Nicole ever tried to connect? Nicole has never made any effort to talk to us apart from when we go out for family dinners or when we're at parties. Even then, the conversations are always about her. My dad invited her out on our hikes early in the relationship, but she didn't like being outside. And over time, my dad stopped taking us hiking even when we asked him. Nicole does pottery from time to time, and I've invited her to my Art Honor Society events, but she always declined. We've made every effort to get to know her, but she only seems interested in talking with my dad. She doesn't understand that we're a part of his life too. Update. Regarding Thanksgiving dinner, when my dad and Nicole arrived, I asked if I could speak with them both. My dad said he didn't want to talk and went into the living room. Nicole still remained by the front door, so I apologized for insulting her. She replied that she needed to leave and went to the living room. Overall, she still seemed rightfully angry with me. Dinner was awkward because my grandma would try to get my dad and I to talk, but he wouldn't really bother. After dinner, I pulled him aside and apologized again. He ignored me and went straight to Nicole. I still wasn't sure if I was heading back with him or not, so I packed everything just in case. When he was getting ready to leave, I asked him if I could come back home. He said Nicole wasn't comfortable having me home, even though it had been a few days since the incident. I spent the entire night crying on the phone with my sister. After having a call with my maternal grandpa, he called my paternal grandparents a couple days later to discuss my situation. I overheard the call between them. My maternal grandpa expressed he was concerned about me, especially my mental state, and asked my paternal grandparents if they were willing to talk to my dad about putting me in therapy. My grandparents said they'd be willing to take me to their church's mental support group or talk with their faith leader who specializes in grief counseling. My grandpa pushed back on the idea and mentioned a need for more professional help, but they were not receptive to the idea. All three of them also had a heated conversation about my living arrangement. My grandpa said it was ridiculous for a grown man to throw out their daughter, but it was shameful that my paternal grandparents are not hard-pressed in helping me get back home. That's all I heard regarding the conversation. I, 28 male, sent my girlfriend who's 27 flowers anonymously. I sent my girlfriend a box of flowers anonymously the day after Christmas. Don't really know what prompted me to do this, but I definitely didn't get the reaction I was expecting. For context, I'm 28 male and she's 27 female. We've been dating on and off for about 5 years, but we got serious in 2022, became stable, exclusive, and started talking about moving in together in the near future. 2023 was a pretty rough year for both of us, individually and financially, but our relationship has been fine, or so I thought, up until now. Like I said in the beginning, I sent her a box of flowers, an expensive box. I did not put a note, nor did I tell her that I was sending her flowers. The day they were delivered, they called and said they would be delivering them to her place in an hour. I took it upon myself to pick up her favorite breakfast and go surprise her with that after the flowers were delivered. First red flag. When I was close to her apartment and started calling her to tell her that I was surprising her with breakfast and would be outside in a few minutes, she did not pick up the phone. She texted me and told me she was on the phone handling something and would call me back. After about 10 to 15 minutes of waiting, still no call back, I texted her and said that I had picked up breakfast for her and that I was outside and if she could just come down and get me. She read my message and didn't respond for another few minutes before calling me back and saying she was coming down. She did not say anything about the flowers, even though I know they had been delivered and the delivery driver sent a picture of them in front of her door, so I know it was at the right unit. She comes down and greets me with a hug and a kiss, the usual, and we go upstairs. The flowers were nowhere to be seen, and she was mad jumpy. She kind of guided me to the couch, and she was really weird about me getting up and moving around her apartment. She kept asking me if I wanted anything, water or whatever, and said that she would bring it to me. She doesn't usually do this, but that in itself is not so weird. What was weird to me was the fact that she was glued to her phone texting the whole time, and she seemed a little upset. I didn't say anything about the flowers. I told her I had just come by to drop off breakfast and that I had to go handle some things and I would call her later. I got up and left, and she let me leave without a second thought. A few days passed by as normal, and I still didn't mention the flowers. Last night, on New Year's Eve, we were at a party together, and I got a little drunk, and in the middle of a conversation about something completely off topic, she stops mid-sentence and says, "By the way, did you send me flowers the other day?" I said yes. She said they didn't have a note or anything and asked why I didn't tell her. I told her it was on a whim and I had kind of forgot about it, and instantly our conversation was interrupted by the 30 seconds to midnight countdown. The rest of the night was normal. Today I went to her apartment again, and now the flowers are on her living room table in plain sight. I mentioned that I hadn't seen them the last time I was there, and she claimed they hadn't been delivered yet. I know for a fact that's a lie. Is she cheating on me? Honestly, I'd be creeped out about the random flowers with no note attached, but knowing that I'm faithful to my man, I would have asked you about them instead of hiding it. Same. The only two reasons I can think of her not saying anything is either she has a side piece or she told someone no and they thought it was from them and creeped her out. Anonymous surprise flowers are scary, honestly, especially if you've encountered someone creepy that recent. Once I received flowers anonymously and I was freaking out for days because I thought it was an old stalker I had had. I hate when people do that. For all you know, she could have an ex that's been pestering her lately, and she might have thought that he sent them. It's possible she texted him and was waiting for a response when you showed up, and that's why she hid the flowers. Is there any reason why she would think it would upset you if one of her exes was trying to get in touch with her again? The only way you'll ever know why she didn't say anything is if you sit her down and ask her. You've known her long enough to know if she's lying to your face. Sounds like a stupid game. Did you already have reason to believe she was cheating? She probably was uncomfortable receiving the flowers without a note and didn't want to cause problems by bringing it up to you, as it seems you already suspect her of cheating. She probably did ask and talk to people to see if they knew where the flowers were from. Doesn't necessarily mean she was talking to an affair partner. She could have been texting a friend. It's risky to think you can go from an open relationship to a monogamous relationship with the same person. It's a different way to love, different level of trust. Such a long open relationship means the other person is not prioritized. There is no habit to do so. Otherwise, it would be too painful. So once she established they weren't from her side piece, or at the very least someone she's been flirting with, she then asked you, "Oh, by the way," and put them on display. 100% sketchy behavior. Call her out and tell us what excuses she comes up with. Bro, she lying about something. Even if they weren't from you, any trusting girlfriend would have nothing to hide and would be like, "Someone sent me random flowers today." If it felt weird to you, trust your gut, buddy. Yeah, this. I'm seeing women bend over backwards to make her behavior normal or one of those safety-conscious women. But why didn't she include OP in this safety? I would immediately ask my boyfriend, even the dude who mistreated me. If you can't ask basic questions, why are you with somebody? Well, I'm seeing men bend over backwards to ignore the red flags of her boyfriend sending her anonymous flowers on a whim. That crap is neither innocent nor normal. Am I the jerk for banning my sister's son from events that I host? I treat my family to dinners out and other events fairly often. My sister, Charlotte, recently moved closer to me and our parents. Before then, I only saw her and my nephew Leo for holidays. I invited Charlotte on a family dinner out, and it was an absolute disaster because of Leo. Charlotte called me while she was driving to the restaurant. I could hear Leo yelling in the background. Charlotte asked Leo to wait a few minutes until she was done calling me, and then she would give Leo her phone. She wasn't doing anything to actually discipline Leo. My nephew's behavior was no better inside the restaurant. Leo is 8, and yet he was acting like some sort of 2-year-old. He was jumping up and down the booths, yelling to get Charlotte's attention. He threw bread at another patron service dog. My dad took away the bread after Leo ignored the first warning, and Leo threw a tantrum. People were staring at us, and I would have been too. Leo's behavior was completely unacceptable. While all of this was happening, Charlotte just said things like, "Oh, Leo, you can play on my phone," and wasn't doing anything to actually discipline my nephew. While we were outside leaving, and Leo was with his grandparents out of earshot, I told Charlotte that this could never happen again. I told Charlotte that she needs to get Leo under control, and until she does, he's not welcome at any events in public that I host for the family. Charlotte said that I was a horrible person for excluding her kid, and to think about how I would have felt as an 8-year-old to know I wasn't welcome at family gatherings. If Charlotte doesn't want to hurt Leo's feelings, then she cannot mention the family events I host or actually do something to discipline him. Our parents understandably asked to not get involved in our disagreement. Friends are divided because some are saying Leo shouldn't even be in restaurants until Charlotte gets him under control, and others claim what I described Leo doing was normal kid behavior. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Your sister is being a jerk to her son, though. He needs appropriate guidance on how to behave. He may be struggling because he missed out on socialization milestones because of lockdown. As a mental health professional, I and colleagues are seeing that the full effects of that on young people is only just beginning to manifest, let alone be fully understood. Not the jerk. If he can't behave properly in a restaurant, he doesn't belong in a restaurant. His behavior is not normal for an 8-year-old, and Charlotte is not doing him any favors by refusing to teach him how to conduct himself in public. My ex-wife demands I financially support her new family after she used me for years. I have 2 sons, ages 16 and 14, with my ex-wife. Our marriage reached a bitter end when I learned she had remained married to me for over 3 years, so I would support her through returning to school so she could switch careers to an even better paying one, despite her old one paying as much as mine. For years, I tried so hard to save our marriage because I felt it fracture. She played along until she got what she wanted, and then she was honest that she had never wanted to save our marriage and had been over me for years. When we divorced, custody was set to 50-50 of our boys, so she was ordered to pay child support to me because she was making so much more after her change of career in education. She remarried a year after our divorce and had more kids. After the birth of her last kid 4 years ago, things got bad. Her husband was diagnosed with cancer. Then one of her kids got diagnosed with a long-term medical condition. Then lockdown impacted her job. Our boys would tell me how rough things were at their mom's and how they wanted to live more with me. So I went to the court and the judge moved her down to every other weekend and changed the child support order to reflect her decrease in custody. Recently, she had to move into a smaller house because of how badly they were struggling, and then she came to me for help after the courts refused to end the child support payments. She told me I needed to help her and that I should be helping to take care of my boy's family, and that's what she and her family are. I told her she used me for 3 years so that she could survive off of my money. She did not get to ask me for more, to support a family that's not my own. She called me a selfish jerk, told me her family is living off charity and they could be so much better off if I would help them. I asked her why I was supposed to care. She told me she wished she had cheated while we were together and that using me for money wasn't enough. Again, she told me about her family and how they would starve. I told her I didn't care if they did or not, that none of them are my problem and I only care about my kids. She called me a jerk. Her husband sent me a text that night saying I was a cruel jerk and he hoped the boys would hate me when they realize I want their whole family to suffer. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk, but make sure you have a high-level conversation with your boys so that they'll be prepared for your ex and her husband when they try to paint you as the root of all evil when they go over there. Not the jerk. Is she actually destitute? It doesn't sound like she is. She moved into a smaller house. That's still a house. It's not a shelter, not even an apartment. Are they on food stamps? I'm getting the sense she's having a hard time adjusting to a life on a more modest income, but not that she's totally broke. You also know she has a history of manipulating money out of you. I'd leave this up to the courts. If she was really broke, wouldn't the court lower her child support payments? Not the jerk. While the degree of anger you exhibit is concerning, I don't see you as the jerk. First, your ex and her new husband are threatening to destroy your relationship with your kids. That's enough to go back to the court and try to get full custody if you want to go down that route. As for the finances, she can go to court and ask the judge to reduce her child support payments. Wait, she tried that. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his ex? Please let us know. Not your monkeys, not your circus. Next. Am I the jerk for refusing to tell my husband the gender of our baby after he skipped going to the doctor's appointment with me? My husband and I are expecting. This is our first baby and we're excited. Thing is, he barely attends any doctor's appointments with me, and his excuses aren't even valid. He's willing to miss the doctor's appointments over soccer or a drink or board games with his friends. His response is always, "I'm not the one carrying the baby. Why do I have to go see the doctor with you?" Last week was my final straw. He was supposed to come with me for the baby's gender reveal appointment, but he chose to not come last minute because his friend invited him to fish and chips meal. I was pretty livid, but I didn't make a fuss about it. My mom went with me instead. He texted asking me to tell him the results, boy or girl, but I refused to tell him. He kept spam calling me, but I hung up each time. He came home fuming, demanding I tell him the results, but I refused and bluntly told him since he refused to attend the appointments, then he gets no results till after the baby is born, and said I was willing to die on this hill. He went off calling me spiteful and immature for doing this and punishing him. He said he's the father and has the right to know. He then called me dramatic since I wasn't alone and my mom was with me. I said he gets no results, period. He's been fuming about it and told his family, and they're now pressuring me to stop playing mind games with him and tell him, but I declined. Am I the jerk? Update. I just wanted to mention that my husband just attempted to contact my doctor to get the results. It didn't go well and we had another argument over it. He couldn't get it since his mom was the one who made the call. Not the jerk. Already a deadbeat dad before the baby is even born. I would drop a friend if I found out they prioritized fish and chips over their wife and baby's doctor's appointment. If he's telling you, "I'm not carrying the baby, why do I have to go to the doctor with you?" that's going to turn into, "I didn't push out that baby, why should I look after it?" real quick. Not the jerk. Not the jerk. My ex pulled this with our second baby, and I caved and told him, I shouldn't have. You need to seriously reconsider this relationship. He's showing you that he and his friends are more important than you and your baby. He sees going to appointments with you as punishment, not as a chance to make sure you and the baby are healthy. Don't be like me and stay until he leaves you for another woman. Everyone sucks here. This whole dynamic is so toxic. If he's not being a supportive partner, I recommend considering walking away and looking for alternative sources of support, like your family. Playing these kinds of games, especially where the child is the pawn, is bad for everyone and will undoubtedly affect your kid if this continues into his or her adolescence. If your relationship doesn't last, do you want him to co-parent with you? If so, it's instrumental to separate your relationship with him from his relationship to your kid. As a co-parent, he should have access to the same medical information about his kid as you. Short me $70,000 in violation of our written agreement? It'll cost you $1.8 million. Disclaimer. The names and some of the situations have been changed to protect the identities, but the dollars and general nature of this situation is completely true. Background. A year out of school in the early 90s, I procured a job as a business analyst for a large family-owned tech company. This business was located in the booming heart of technology at the time and was very profitable. As tech took over the next decade, the company thrived and remained family-owned. which was a rich family, and company became exceedingly wealthy with a valuation and net worth in the high 9, low 10 figures. The family that owned it was quite neurotic, very moody, and had a reputation as very ruthless, greedy when it came to financing, deal-making, employees, etc. I truly believe this is what held them back from ultimately becoming a household name as a company. As I progressed in the company, I gained more and more face time with the owners. I worked on some projects directly with ownership that really paid off and gained me even greater access to their inner circle. Now, like a lot of people at the time, and particularly those who worked in tech, I was heavily invested in tech stocks. I discussed some of my investments and gains with ownership as casual conversation, though investing had nothing to do with my role in the company. That is, until one day in late 1999 when the owner came to me and asked me if I would invest some of his personal money. He wanted me to take big risks to see if they would pay off using $1 million of his personal money. I was a bit hesitant, but still, being in my late 20s and wanting to prove myself, I said I would. I asked for a written agreement where they acknowledged this wasn't my role in the company, was a personal matter between the owners and me, and to document my compensation for this side arrangement, 20% of all profits. Around this same time, and by working in the industry, I started to notice the weakness associated with a lot of tech companies. They just weren't living up to their hype and stock price, and some seemed like they were starting to run out of money. I had no inside information, just a strong sense of which companies were struggling based on my work in the business. Based on this, I started using both my money and my owner's money to short tech companies just after the new year in 2000. For anyone unfamiliar with shorting, it means if the value of a stock decreases, the value of the investment increases. I had a few long positions, but my overall position was very short. Since the owner wanted a big risk and big reward, I used his money and obtained leverage or margin from the financial institution where I maintained both his and my trading accounts. The accounts were separate, but both under my name. Again, I documented this and gained consent. Well, both my account and his suffered some moderate losses in the first 2 months of 2000 before the bubble began to burst. Then both accounts, but his in particular, began to skyrocket. Ownership's pettiness. In June, the company began to suffer a downturn. We were still profitable, but since we provided tech services and products, we were not immune to weakness in the broader market. I had not informed the owner of my short strategy. He came to me one day and asked how his money was doing, saying he suspected it was way down like the general market. To his surprise, I informed him that while we still had some money tied up in options, puts, and shorts, but based on the positions I had closed, there was $1.35 million in cash sitting in the account that belonged to him. Again, I still had a bunch of open positions, which, if memory serves, were worth about $1 million on that date. But the positions I had closed had yielded $1.35 million in cash just sitting in his account, which was in my name. The owner, either through ignorance or lack of attention, said, "Great, $1.35 million. Fantastic work in this down market. Will you please wire it to me?" I responded that I would, but would be taking my 20% of the $350,000 profit, or $70,000, before wiring him the $280,000. I reminded him that I still had open positions that had yet to pay off or close, but I didn't state the amount. He, once again, appeared not to understand or comprehend the open position statement, but instead totally focused on and became incensed about my rightful claim for $70,000. He went on and on about how times were tough, I should be grateful for a job, particularly at my young age, and the entire $350,000 was necessary for him in the company. I knew this wasn't true based on my position within the company. Worse, this was my first time personally experiencing the greedy and corrupt nature that served as the basis for ownership's reputation. Now comes the revenge. Since, after 2 separate conversations, the owner didn't seem to grasp that the open positions would yield at least some income and thus additional profit, I decided not to mention it again. I sent him back the entire $1.35 million and continued to manage the open positions to the best of my ability. And here's the kicker. The owner never brought it up again. He seemed to think the $1.35 million payment was the entire value of the account and never understood or remembered that open positions still existed. He never asked for records, tax documents, or any time of audit or financials. Given the fact that he was dishonest with me, I didn't feel the need to disabuse him of that notion. Ultimately, after a bit more net gain, I covered all of the shorts and exercised all of the options, puts in this case, for an additional $1.8 million. I worked for the company for 3 more years, and owner never asked about it during my tenure, after I gave notice or since. I know it's a bit crass and even shady, but given his dishonesty with me over the $70,000, I felt justified in keeping the additional $1.8 million. I paid taxes on the gain, long-term capital gain, and went on my way with a fantastic nest egg. Nobody has asked about it since, and I have only told the story to a few people, and even then, only after the statute of limitations passed. The final ironic cherry on top of this sundae is that during my remaining 3 years, I gained greater influence with ownership and position within the company because they considered me loyal for giving the $1.35 million back and not making too much of a stink about the $70,000 profit. Little did they know I got the better of them. The company eventually folded due to family disputes, but my understanding is that ownership walked away in a very good financial position. They likely could have been much better and greater company had they not practiced the same dishonesty that they showed me with their vendors, clients, and employees. Update: there have been no negative consequences from this. In fact, the remaining family members have reached out a time or two about some consulting work. They have no clue. Karen stole my hair and skin oils and threw them out. Big mistake. I, 32 female, and my husband Alex, 34 male, have allowed my sister-in-law Julie, who's 34, to stay in our house due to her soon-to-be ex kicking her out and filing for divorce. Julie still has her job, but doesn't want to go through the ordeal of getting a new apartment while dealing with her soon-to-be ex, and we didn't want her to have to stay in a hotel during that. I'm Indian, and Alex and the rest of his family are white. I feel like that might be relevant to what happened here. I use oils for most of my hair and skincare. I also use chemically manufactured products, but I found that it's better for my hair and skin. That's also how my mother cared for me when I was younger. Julie disapproves of this and thinks that I'm just going around town an oily and greasy mess, despite me repeatedly explaining why I do this to her. She's tried to convince me to switch to all chemical products that she uses, but I politely decline each time. When I woke up today after sleeping in with Alex, I walked into our shared bathroom and I saw the case of my oils was not there. I looked further around the bathroom to see where it could be, and I asked my husband if he had moved them. He said no, and that's when I went into the living room and asked Julie about my case. Julie gave me a smirk and told me that she had woken up early this morning and took my case out of the bathroom to drive to the other side of the community we live in and dump it in the garbage bin there. I was tired and thought that she was joking until Julie bragged about it, saying that she did me a favor and that I wouldn't have to use such uncivilized ways of taking care of myself. Once her words sunk in, I was upset, and I called Alex into the room to explain to him what she did. Alex seemed disappointed but not surprised about what Julie did and told her that what she did was disrespectful. Julie tried to defend herself, saying that she only did what she thought was best and it shouldn't be such a big deal. I cut her off, saying that I wanted her to give me $76, which was the cost of the oils, so I could replace them. Julie got nervous and said she was in a tight spot financially, so she couldn't pay me back right away. I said that was fine, but I expected her to pay me at some point. After a small back and forth, Julie eventually packed a bag and said she'd be staying at a hotel to give me time to cool down and realize how irrational I was being. A few hours later, my mother-in-law and father-in-law scolded me for making Julie uncomfortable in my home and that I shouldn't force her to pay for something so small. My husband asked his mom how she'd feel if Julie tossed out hundreds of dollars of skincare she owned because Julie thought it wasn't good for her. My mother-in-law just replied with, "That's different," before telling us that I should apologize and then hanging up. Edit: my mother-in-law and father-in-law are paying for Julie's hotel and apparently are going to do so until she comes back to our house. Not the jerk. She stole your items. It doesn't matter if she used them, gave them away, or trashed them. She stole your items and you don't have them anymore. This is after you graciously let her live in your house. That's different? BS. Something so small? Then the father-in-law and mother-in-law can give you the $76. Tight spot financially? Then maybe not incur costs by stealing other people's stuff. She thought that was best? How about not doing that in someone else's house? Does she throw out things she doesn't approve of in everybody's house or just yours? I'm curious why her ex threw her out, but I have my suspicions. Not the jerk, and Julie is an ungrateful brat. She has money to stay at a hotel but not to pay you back for things that she stole from you? My boyfriend, who's 29, told me, 27 female, that there was a chance he'd leave me if I was infertile. I was really sick from ages 22 to 24 with my lungs, and I almost didn't make it. The doctors still to this day can't tell me what caused it, and I recovered, but I still have minor breathing issues from time to time. My boyfriend and I have been together for 1.5 years and recently have been talking more about having kids in the future. We unfortunately never spoke about things like infertility, which sadly runs in my family. I was quite taken aback when he said there was a chance he'd leave our relationship if I couldn't safely carry a child because of my lungs, currently being reinvestigated, or if I was infertile. When I asked him if he was the infertile one, he said he expected me to do the same, but it's something I'd personally never consider leaving him over. We revisited the conversation the next day, and he went from saying there was a chance to him stating he's 95% sure he wouldn't leave me. I, of course, would never stand in the way of him being a father, but I can't seem to shake off the fact that there's this condition attached to our relationship now. It's made me feel like my value is attached to my fertility, and I'm starting to view him in a different light. Am I just being overly sensitive? Edit. I just wanted to note that I'm not actually confirmed to be infertile. I'm just at a slight risk because I've had a few women in my family that had fertility issues, and there's also the concern that I wouldn't be able to safely carry a baby due to my lungs. We would obviously have to run tests to have anything confirmed. Update. We took a week break and came back to discuss what happened. He explained that he didn't mean what he said, and he was in shock because our relationship was falling apart, but I still feel doubtful when even after 24 hours, he only changed it to being 95% sure he wouldn't leave, and during our recent discussion, he admitted he didn't understand exactly how hurtful it would be for me to hear something like that. After reading everyone's comments, speaking to my friends, family, and therapist, we've ended our relationship. Unfortunately, I've realized that after my boyfriend told me there'd be a possibility he'd leave me if I were infertile, that I'm sadly no longer going to feel secure in this relationship, knowing that he's told me he's unable to support and stick by me should I face health issues in the future. And it's making me doubt if he can show up for me at all. Which admittedly, he's failed to be there for me already this year during my multiple family passings and important health appointments. I'm devastated and the most heartbroken I've ever been, as I really thought we had a loving and caring relationship and that we would be able to build an amazing life together. But I've realized I'm choosing someone who's never going to choose me and that I deserve better. Honestly, leaving was the right choice because I believe that the first thing he said was the actual truth. He just started trying to walk it back because he saw that it was something that was going to ruin the relationship. I'm glad that she got advice and followed through. She mentioned possible infertility. He said he would dump her for infertility. She got nervous about the relationship, and he backpedaled? I don't think he was using his thinking brain, but what's the plan? Assume everything goes great, no infertility, no need to ever have resided this concern. Then he was stupid to have opened his mouth in the first place. Wait to dump her until infertility arises? Save time all around and just break up. She made the right choice for that one. I'm infertile. There's a 0 chance I can conceive and carry a baby. If my significant other said that was a deal breaker, then it just is. Relationship has run its course. Even if later they didn't mean it or weren't sure, I would know that they would resent me for a lack of a baby because of something out of my control. I had to have a total hysterectomy because of cancer. There was no other way that wouldn't have been just rolling dice and praying things didn't go badly. All for a theoretical kid that may never exist. Breaking up is painful, but knowing your beloved is angry with something about you that you can't change is worse than any breakup. Honestly, to some people it is a deal breaker. It's not an evil thing. I also wouldn't want to be with a person who's child-free and vice versa, or with a person that hates pets. That's life. I don't ever want kids, but if fatherhood is important to the guy, isn't that his right? I mean, at least he communicated it directly when the issue came up. It's not his right to make her feel broken. It is his right. He's old enough that he should know how controversial his choice would be for potential partners, and he should have been more upfront before entering into a serious relationship with her. Except, it's not controversial at all. It's the norm that most people want kids, and if one of the partners couldn't or wouldn't have them, then the relationship is over. No, it isn't. This isn't the 1600s. Would I be the jerk for pulling out of my family's Secret Santa after seeing the wish list I got? Our family's Secret Santa, as of right now, has 20 participants. Not sure if this is a normal amount or if it's a lot. I've only been in Secret Santas with 5 to 7 people at work. We have re-rolled 5 times because we either A, changed the rules after getting our receipt, or B, added people. We started with 10, decided to add spouses, then the kids, and now random family friends. Our current rules are ridiculous in my opinion. We were told to put affordable gifts that a kid can buy, but everyone is putting their expensive life wishes on the list. Then we have to get at least 5 gifts from the wish list with no budget, and you have to declare how many gifts you are giving in the group chat to make sure that you receive the same amount, which makes no sense. You also need to add where the gifts can be found. A few people have also started saying that they're going to buy from lists other than the recipients. I'm already totally confused. Why are they making this so complicated? On top of that, everyone keeps editing their lists, adding and removing things that they think of. I've explained how inconvenient this is becoming and even tried the angle of the financial burden being placed on the parents of multiple kids. There's 6 kids in total in the group. Most of the group agrees, but are explaining that they are gritting their teeth for family's sake. Well, your family sounds like a headache. The list I got today after a month of back and forth, I've been asking since this seems to be a serious project at this point, is riddled with luxury name brands like Dior and Louis Vuitton that I know no one in the group can afford. Maybe 2 people can buy one of these items, and that's a strong maybe. Nothing on the list can be found for less than $200, and I checked. Did I mention that we are not allowed to deviate from the list unless explicitly stated that we can? Yeah. This doesn't feel like the essence of gift giving or even Secret Santa. There's so many rules, no element of surprise. At this point, we're just giving each other items to unwrap. I'm one of 3 who followed the rules, and no one edited their list when this was brought up. My entire list is $100 in total. Edit. Quite a few of you are interested in specific items requested from my recipient. Here's an example. The list I got includes luxury handbags, a PS5, Dyson Airwrap, a cashmere robe, a plane ticket to Bali, to name a few. The cheapest is a green Amazon Kindle, which is $203 with tax. Not the jerk, and I'd drop out. I'd even do it in a family chat if there is one. I'd let them know you would be willing to rejoin with 1 gift for the person you drew and a budget of a certain amount. Otherwise, Merry Christmas. Not the jerk. This sounds stressful and expensive. Usually the point of Secret Santa is to help relieve some of the expenses of buying a lot of individual gifts. I think this is going to blow up in a negative way the way that they're going about it. It's a complete expensive mess. Let us know how it goes. Not the jerk. This is a disaster. $200 minimum is ridiculous. Kids in the group or not. What's wrong with them? I would back down even if it puts a strain on my relations with these people. If everyone buys 5 gifts, that's $1,000 minimum. It's scandalous. Well, what do you think? Should OP stay in the Secret Santa or not? Please let us know. This is giving me flashbacks to Secret Santa when I was in 6th grade. The gift that I took to school was the coolest vortex football you'd ever seen. Had big wings on it and made a loud whistle when you threw it. You know what my Secret Santa got me? A microwave omelet maker. Am I the jerk for not allowing my boyfriend to have overnight house guests? I'm neurodivergent and bipolar. I'm prone to psychosis, and I was diagnosed many years ago, long before I met my husband. He's been aware the entire time that I've known him, and he knows there are some quirks about me because of my neurodivergence. I'm high functioning, for lack of a better term, and so my issues may be invisible to many people, but my partner, his family, and my friends and family all know my situation. Specifically, I don't have overnight house guests, and I don't allow guests past midnight unless it's pre-cleared with me. This is because the sounds and noises and interruptions of other people are a lot for me to handle, and I can only handle and mask so much before I'm just completely spent and I eventually lose my temper and filter and either become enraged or start sobbing or even find myself unable to sleep for days on end and going psychotic because I'm so overstimulated and I haven't slept. My husband's mother has never seen me this way, and I hope she never does. Losing my temper and filter is not something I want to do around friends or family. I also need 2 to 4 hours to calm my brain down after a lot of socialization before I can go to sleep, hence my midnight cutoff. I don't feel this drained or stressed around my partner, or he wouldn't be my husband. But everyone but him and my best friend of a decade, yes. My husband moved from his city, which his mother lives in, his father has passed long ago, to my city to be with me when we got married. Before he did that, I talked to him about how I can't have overnight house guests. In 2 years of dating, neither of us has had an overnight house guest except each other. He said he understood and it was no problem. But now his mother wants to come to visit for a week at Christmas, and she wants to stay with us in the guest room, my partner's office that has a bed in it also. He sleeps in there when I'm having trouble sleeping. This will require my partner to work in the kitchen right beside my office corner, not really a room, causing a ton of noise and disruption. And we'll have another person around all the time draining my energy. Currently, our offices are separated. My partner said he agreed with the overnight house guest thing when he assumed I meant our friends. He says he never understood it also meant his mother. I've offered to pay for half a hotel when his mother comes to stay, but he says that isn't the point, and she doesn't want to come if she can't stay with us. We live in the city, and the hotel is literally 1 block from us. This is not an exaggeration. I've stayed at it before for a week when I was waiting for our apartment to become ready, and it's very classy. Am I the jerk for insisting his mother stays at a hotel when she visits so I can stay sane? Edit. Yes, I have been hospitalized for 2 weeks before for being psychotic. So just grin and bear it means I probably go back to the hospital for not sleeping and going crazy. I don't think this is a fair outcome for me. Not the jerk. But is he your boyfriend or your husband? The title says boyfriend, but you call him your husband in the post. In any case, the solution is simple. If she insists on staying at your house, you go stay at the hotel. Look, it's not like you're being mean, and it's also not like he doesn't know about your mental health issues. I think he is intentionally obstructionist because he doesn't want conflict with his mom. Or he thinks you will cave in. Don't do it. You have a solution. But honestly, has he even explained your mental health issues to his mom? It sounds like she has no clue. OP. Husband of about 6 months. I keep calling him my partner or boyfriend still. I'm totally doing the hotel thing. I'm going to talk to him tonight. People have given many helpful suggestions. His mother knows I'm bipolar, but does not know about the psychosis. Almost nobody does. The amount of people that know about the psychosis is 3 total, including my husband, best friend, and psychiatrist. I'm very private about it because it was the lowest point of my life to be hospitalized for 2 weeks. Update. I talked to John and my mother-in-law, and I got a lot of messages asking for an update. I spoke to my husband John last night about the situation regarding his mom staying at the hotel, and I explained that I would pay for and go to a hotel myself, or pay for half of his mother's hotel when she came. John was absolutely aghast. First, he was freaked out about me not running the house for the week and having to take over my roles, as I had guessed. John has autism and is very attached to his routines. Here's my role in the house from one of my comments. I do his laundry, taxes, all of the vet runs, all of the groomer runs, all of the grocery runs. I plan all of our doctors, dentist, and optometrist appointments. I send out the Christmas cards. I'm the sole driver in the house, and I take him to all of his appointments. I also get all of the car maintenance and washing done myself. I go to the pharmacy and dry cleaner for him. I replace anything that's broken or damaged, his or mine. I plan all of our date nights, all of our anniversaries, our vacations and trips. I picked all the furnishings for our apartment because doing so stressed him out. I do the budgeting, finances, and pay all of the bills, with both our money. It's maybe an hour a night for him to cook and clean, maybe 4 times a week. We get our own breakfasts and lunches, and we eat out 3 times a week. But I spend much more than an hour a day running the rest of the household. So John was already having to make a stretch to his routine to have his mother visit, but to have his mother visit and me gone? He really didn't like that. Plus, he told me he hated the idea of not sleeping in the same bed with me for a week, and that this is a non-starter. So he called his mother, which we were both nervous about because he had talked it up so much. They're from a culture where respecting your parents is very important, and John was extremely afraid of offending his mother. We called her and explained the situation, saying that it's really hard for me to fall asleep unless I'm around him or my best friend, and that's why I had the no house guests rule. We told her there was a place less than a block away that was a lovely 4-star hotel and we would be happy to pay for it. Well, then his mother started yelling and talking loudly. Not at me though. Best I can remember, here's what she said. "John, you had a fight with her about me staying there when you're happy to pay for me to stay in a 4-star hotel? John, I know you had a fight because you never both call me unless it's a holiday. You're telling me you didn't immediately give me the chance to stay in a 4-star hotel? John, when was the last time I stayed in a 4-star hotel? Let me tell you, the answer is never." So his mom is extremely excited about staying in the 4-star hotel and now keeps making jokes about how she might not even see us on the vacation because she'll be at the spa, fancy restaurant, etc. at the hotel. John is happy as pie about all of this, Because I'm happy and his mom is really happy. He doesn't care at all that she isn't staying with us, only that she wasn't offended by the hotel idea. Thanks to everyone that told me to respect my boundaries. All the best. Wait, a Reddit story with a happy ending where everyone gets along? Don't worry, Karen, it's probably just a glitch in the Matrix. Here's one to bring us back to reality. Am I the jerk for telling my cousin I didn't get a graduation present? I, 23 female, recently graduated from university with honors. I'm not from the US. I attended uni for free and had a scholarship which took care of my housing and food situation. The country I'm from has really good deals for student dorms, and I was able to stay at a dorm for the entirety of my studies. I don't own a car either as I work from home. This will be important later. I landed a stable job right after uni, and I'm attending what you in the US call grad school. My parents weren't really supportive during my studies. They expressed zero interest in attending my graduation or conferences when I presented work. Yesterday, I visited my uncle, male 43. He took his kids to Paris for a holiday, and they had a blast, so I went over to see photos, videos, hear how it was, etc. My cousin, who's 8, she asked if I'd ever been to Paris. I told her no, but it is on my list. She asked me why I never went to Paris, and I told her I never had the opportunity. Now, my uni friend, male 24, was in Paris at the same time as my uncle and cousins, and they met by chance in a restaurant. My uncle knows my friend. My uncle is an interior designer, and he designed my friend's mom's house after I introduced them, and my uncle mentioned that they saw him in Paris. I remembered he was gifted a trip to Paris and London as a graduation gift from his parents, and my uncle mentioned that my friend told him so. I remembered my friend telling me about that holiday, and I verified to my uncle that was probably his graduation present, and then my cousin asked what I got as a graduation present. As you all probably have guessed by now, I got nothing. I'm absolutely not entitled to anything, but for context, my younger sister, who's 19, got into uni this year, and my parents gave her roughly $900 worth of gifts, including shoes and jewelry. I told my cousin I got myself a pair of shoes I really wanted for graduation, and from my first real paycheck, and my boyfriend gave me a notebook. My cousin looked really sad and told me that's really not enough for something as big as a graduation. My uncle looked really upset too, and I just switched over to another topic. This morning, I got an angry call from my mother. She called me an ungrateful brat for demanding a gift for doing what was required of me to do, and asked if I won a participation trophy. She also mentioned my uncle suggested they buy me a car, something I never wished for or expressed wanting, and said if I want a car, I should work for it, a sentiment I agree with. I just hung up because I didn't have it in me to deal with her. So Reddit, am I the jerk? Not the jerk. It seems your mother is wanting to yell at you for demands that your uncle is making. Her issue should be, and should remain, with him. If she's embarrassed by your uncle for not giving you a gift, you still don't owe her an apology, as this is also something between her and your uncle. Not the jerk. You gave an honest answer to the kid's question. If your parents are embarrassed by the truth, that's their problem. Karen calls me undateable, so I made her cry. This is a weird title, but here's what actually happened. My ex and I broke up 5 years ago after a year-long relationship. He broke up with me, and I took it very hard back then. I can't say I did anything crazy, aside from a few weeks after the breakup, getting really drunk on a night out and sending him some embarrassing texts. It was the worst heartbreak I've ever had, and it didn't help that he kept messaging me to be friends, even though I tried to set boundaries and say that I need space to heal. Anyways, that's all in the past. I can confidently say that I have indeed healed from that, and I'm over him. He recently got married to a girl he started dating like 2 months after we broke up. Honestly, I'm happy for him. Good for them. Me, on the other hand, I've dated since then, but haven't been able to find anyone worth marrying. I haven't even had another serious relationship since then. He's still in the periphery of my social circle because we still have a lot of mutual friends from uni, and sometimes I see both of them in social settings. While he and I have buried the hatchet and usually just chat when we happen to be in the same room for a bit, although we never text or meet up outside of these contexts, his wife and I have always treated each other with polite disinterest. I know she really doesn't like me. An important note about her is that she's been unemployed for a long time. I don't know if it's because she wants to be a stay-at-home wife, completely valid if that's her thing, or because she's been unable to find work, but she hasn't worked in many years despite having a master's degree. I've been really able to advance my career in the past 5 years, and I'm quite far ahead in my field for someone my age, and I'm very proud of myself because I worked extremely hard. Anyways, here's the issue. The other day, a bunch of people went out for drinks, including myself. They were both there. We were all sitting at the same table in a bar. Someone I haven't seen in a while asked me if I'm dating anyone. I replied, no, not right now. My ex's wife quickly made a snark comment, "Oh, it's okay. Some people just stay single," in front of everyone, like 10 of our friends. Without missing a beat, I blurted out, "Yeah, just like some people are meant to stay unemployed." She got really upset, cried, and left. Her husband messaged me that I should apologize to her for embarrassing her. I said I will if she apologizes first. He said she refuses because what I said was worse, apparently. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. People need to learn not to start crap unless they can handle someone else finishing it for them. I have zero sympathy for jerks that are inexplicably rude and then have the audacity to act offended when the object of their rudeness fails to passively accept it. Not the jerk. What she did and said was uncalled for. What you replied with was gold. She seems jealous of your achievements and the fact that her husband still keeps in contact with you. It seems like a lot of insecurity on her end. Even though you are on good terms with your ex now, do you think it's possible to cut ties with him? It just seems like his wife gets a kick out of trying to berate you. He will always have to take her side since she is his life partner now. I just feel like it's going to cause a weird drift in your social circle if she keeps getting included, and she will, because she is his wife. Not the jerk. Don't insult or comment on something unless you're prepared for something to be said back to you. She clearly wanted to dish it out but could not take it, and that's how most of the world works. What's the worst that's going to happen? They aren't going to talk to you when you're in the same social circle? My guess is that you could care less if they do or don't. You're the jerk. I don't know about her tone, but just saying some people stay single isn't an insult unless you're the type that thinks single people are worth less than people in relationships. You overreacted to a touchy subject because you're truly not over the breakup. You may be over your ex, but you transferred your resentment to his new partner. She was giving the right message, but she was the wrong messenger. I see why things didn't work out with your ex and why he would rather be with someone who's unemployed because you sound petty and entitled. You can convince yourself that you're better than her because you have a career, but at the end of the day, she's the one he's coming home to. Fix your attitude and maybe you'll find someone worth marrying, like you say. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her ex's wife? Please let us know. Another good comeback would have been, some of us are meant to settle for leftovers. Karen trashed my condo after years of kindness, ends up paying the price. I leased my rental condo to a single mother with 3 kids in 2016. It was a 3-bed, 2-bath. I had a grace period of 3 days for rent in there, but they were always late. I would not charge them late fees, thinking she's a single mother, and I would follow up consistently to get my rent. Most of the time, I would receive it 2 to 3 weeks late, and sometimes 2 months late. In my mind, as long as they're a pain and I can help by giving them some time, all was good. Suddenly, I find that in 2020, her husband lives there too. He travels for work, but he lives there, and the money that she's been sending me through Zelle has always been coming out of his account since day one. I let it go and I'm still civil, and he starts communicating with me at every delay. Sometimes he would go silent for 4 to 5 weeks, and I wouldn't be able to reach any of them. I would threaten eviction, and they would come back and pay me. In hindsight, I should have evicted them, but lockdown happened and I didn't want to throw them out. Finally, at the end of 2022, they informed me that by March of 2023, they would be out. They just bought a house and they were very appreciative of me being kind and helping them along the way. They were supposed to leave by March 6 of 2023, and I told them that if they clean the house and leave it in a good condition, they don't have to worry about rent for March. March 6 comes and they tell me that they're still moving and cleaning. I let it go as I had no potential renter yet, and I was just glad that they were cleaning it up. I still didn't have the key to the condo. I would communicate with them during the month of March, saying potential renters wanted to see the place, and they would tell me to send them over. Potential renters would go there and knock, but no one would open the door, and I would try to reach out and they would not respond to me. This happened twice, and they would call me later saying the potential renters never showed up and lied to me. I was getting antsy. And on March 20th, I called and texted both the husband and the wife for a few days straight, asking them to give me the keys. Nothing, no response. On March 24th, my friend and I decided to head over there to see what was going on. We live an hour away. I called both of them and no response. I decided to look them up on the county land records. I knew the county they were building a house in, and I was able to find their new address. My friend and I decided to go to their house and get the key. We get there, knock on the door. The son opens and yells for his mom. His mom comes down and pretends to cry, saying that they lost the key. In my mind, then why the heck couldn't they tell me? And why the heck would you ignore my countless texts and phone calls? At this point, I'm still being civil, and I said that's fine. I'll get the locksmith and charge them the fees. We go to the condo next, and to our surprise, the condo was open. They never bothered to lock it. As soon as my friend and I entered, these 3 words came out of our mouths. Oh my gosh. There was this horrible smell. All the walls had patches over them from a bad paint job. The fridge had food rotting in it. Carpets stunk like they hadn't been cleaned. In one room on the carpet, there was a big paint stain, and the door was also busted. It was the worst feeling because I was so nice to them, and they left my condo unlocked for days, destroyed my place, and didn't even have the decency to clean it or pick up my phone. I was furious that my kindness over the years was repaid like this. Finally, not knowing the extent of the damage, I reached out to them saying I'll keep the $1,000 deposit, and I'm asking them to pay $1,800 more for the cleanup job. They decline on text. I tell them I will sue them. They ended up getting aggressive and told me they know the law too, and I'm not getting a single penny out of them. Then I worked with a lawyer in the first week, still not knowing the full extent of the damage, just some. I send a demand letter for $3,000. Nothing. Then I worked with a contractor, and just for the painting, it cost me around $7,000 as there were around 1,000 patches that they had to sand off. I'm not even exaggerating. I got multiple quotes. The cleaning crew went in the morning at 4 a.m. and ended at 3 p.m. Everything that you can think of that was dirty was dirty. The oven, fridge had not been cleaned for years. There was heavy clogging in both bathroom drains. The toilet was worse than a public toilet. They charged me $600 to clean the house. It ended up costing me $7,600. I continue with the lawyer and end up filing a claim for $11,000, though people told me that I'm wasting money and they will never pay. For me, I couldn't let them get away with it. I ended up charging them for late fees for not paying the month of March that I had agreed to waive if they had cleaned the house. I had in my contract $50 per day for any delay. By the time I had filed, it was easily a few $1,000s. I asked a few Redditors for my throwaway account, and they told me about late fee regulations, but my lawyer told me that they did sign a contract, and in this state, we can sue them for $50 per day until the day we file. Then the saga begins. It was my responsibility to serve them and let them know the mediation. Then it was my responsibility to serve them for the court date. They actively avoided being served twice, and it cost me $400 just to serve them twice. They still didn't show up for mediation or the court date, and judgment was filed in my favor as they didn't show up. Finally, an arrest warrant was out for both of them. I was asked to serve them again. I begged the clerk, saying I cannot spend more money to serve them. She got a document signed by the judge for an alternate method of serving that included text and email. I texted and emailed them their arrest warrants and the next court dates. They finally showed up, and the judge made them give me all their information. They were in court, but I could appear on Zoom. I was able to ask them all their information, including social, driver's license number, bank account statements, salary, and work address. I have to say I felt a bit sorry, as it seems they were still struggling and didn't have enough money to pay their rent based on their statements. The husband earns $150,000 a year and the wife earns $60,000 a year, but their bank account didn't have any money. Finally, I told them I could start garnishing 25% of their monthly wages, or they could pay me immediately. They promised to pay me in chunks of $1,500 every month. I still don't have all of it yet, but them coming there and giving me all of their information was the best revenge I could get. If they would have just agreed to pay me $1,800 in the beginning, or the $3,000 that I demanded, they wouldn't have been on the hook for $11,000. How much you want to bet those renters are going to be posting on Reddit about how much they hate landlords? Karen is furious that I let my daughter ride her pony to school. I'm 36, female, and my daughter, who's 7, asked if she could ride her pony to school last week. For context, we have a small paddock attached to our home where we keep 2 horses, one for me and one for her. Every morning before school, my daughter gets all of her pony chores done before we leave, and we normally walk to school, which takes about 20 minutes. We live on the outskirts of a fairly populated city where it's not uncommon to see horses occasionally, but we are by no means in a rural village. I agreed to let my daughter ride her pony to school because I thought it was a harmless, fun thing to do, and also gives the pony some exercise as we had evening plans and wouldn't be riding that evening. We arrived at the school gates and, of course, gathered a little bit of a crowd, which wasn't a problem. The pony is very good and lapped up all the pats and strokes from the kids. One girl came bounding over from the year above my daughter and started shouting at me, saying she wanted to ride. I politely told her that she couldn't because she doesn't have a riding hat and she would have to learn on a safer horse. She immediately started hysterically crying and pleading with her mom, saying she wanted to ride. Her mom looked at me with disgust and said, "See, this is what happens when you have no self-awareness and bring a horse to a school," and stormed off, dragging her kid with her. I was a bit taken aback, but ignored her, sent my kid into school, and walked the pony home. I was talking to my friend this weekend, and she said I was in fact the problem and I was blatantly showing off and should have known that this would have caused upset and problems. My response is, I turn up to the school in my riding gear regularly, so everyone probably knows I have horses. Is that showing off too? All I wanted to do was let my daughter do something a bit silly and fun. Now I'm really overthinking it though, and almost feel nervous to do school drop-off tomorrow. So, am I the jerk for letting my daughter ride her horse to school? Edit. I want to clear some things up. First, I'm based in England. Second, the pony never went onto school grounds. There's a small patch of grass about 30 meters from the main school gate, and we stood there, so no kids with allergies would be subject to horse germs if they didn't deliberately come over to us. This also means that I don't feel like I should have run it by the school. And lastly, the pony is an ex-riding school pony. It has been surrounded by kids its whole life and used to do kids' birthday parties and everything. I know animals are unpredictable, but I was 99.9% sure that the pony would be fine and actually just appreciate the attention from the tiny humans. He absolutely did. Not the jerk. That woman blames other people for her clear lack of parenting skills. She has to manage her kids' expectations. My husband takes our daughter to school on a motorcycle, and it draws the same attention without the entitled demanding a ride and rude response. Edit. Would bringing a puppy with you get the same responses? I think not. Not the jerk. The other parents need to teach their kids that you can't always have what other people have. It's a fact of life. And this is coming from someone that grew up below the poverty line. Are they going to be mad at another parent for driving an expensive vehicle? If I was the parent, I would just tell my kid, "Look at the pretty horsey, but don't touch it unless they let you, okay?" I'm going with you're the jerk. It does sound like showing off, and you should have had the self-awareness to know it would create a spectacle. They're 7-year-olds. Of course they all want to ride the pony. Maybe you could talk to your daughter's teacher about bringing the pony someday when you can offer rides to everyone. You're the jerk. Come on, it's not rural. Your kid doesn't need to ride a horse to school and cause a ruckus. Sure, it's on parents to ensure their kids know boundaries, but come on. A horse at school is not something a parent needs to deal with. Drop off and pick up is busy, hurried. This parent didn't feel entitled to her kid riding. She was annoyed that you felt entitled to cause chaos during an already challenging time. Did you even check with the school admin before doing this? Just lacking consideration and self-awareness. I'd call the office and apologize. If they say it's fine, okay. I'd be shocked if they said it was. You're the jerk. Animals don't belong at school. Someone could have been severely allergic and gone into anaphylactic shock, or it could have hurt someone. It doesn't matter how well-behaved any animal is. You can't test their behavior in every single situation. People saying this is the same thing as a Ferrari or a motorcycle are delusional. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know. I would have been worried about one of them getting kicked or something like that. Anything's possible with a bunch of unruly 7-year-olds, and I'm fully prepared for the horse experts to chime in and tell me how impossible that would be. Just like those snake experts who say that it's totally safe for 3-year-olds to play with the world's largest snakes. You can't be serious. There's really snake experts that say that? Yeah, they say as long as the snake was raised by humans, then it won't see humans as foods and it will never try to eat the kid. Humans never cease to amaze me. I planned the office Halloween event, and now I feel like absolute garbage. I was recently hired in an assistant role at a law firm fresh out of college. In comparison to other people in the office, excluding the other assistants, I'm pretty young, 22 female. One of the partners put me in charge of the office Halloween party, so I've been planning everything for about 2 weeks. What I came up with was wearing costumes into the office, and an EOD party in the decorated, spooky conference room where people in the office paint pumpkins as treats, select mystery coffee pods, different flavors, as tricks, and just eat sweet food together while streaming the Charlie Brown special. I got into the office early this morning to decorate the office, and the partner in question got annoyed when she came in and saw what I was doing. Even though I got approval from her, she was disappointed that this is what I went with, described it as incredibly juvenile, and said that I should have gone with something like costumes and going to an office happy hour. She's now confirming with the other assistant in charge of the holiday Christmas party that it is an adult affair, expensive dinner outing, and it seems like I stressed everyone out, and I just feel really embarrassed right now. These office morale activities are important, and now I feel like I'm so deeply in the wrong and I messed everything up. Update. To give a bit of context, 1. When I was tasked with planning the event, I did reach out to the girl who had this job before me. She's now in law school, and she said they did pumpkin carving last year, so I pivoted to painting to change it up a bit and decrease on mess. I also added the mystery coffee pod, and decorating the office is a fun little thing. 2. I did get the partner's approval before planning the whole event because I had to budget everything out with a proposal. So she knew about it, but she likely A. forgot about the thing until she saw me decorating, or B. didn't think I was serious. She was also upset because our sister office went out for drinks the day before, and she wanted to impress our new partner, who was sick and couldn't even attend. 3. For everyone who said that Charlie Brown was juvenile, I agree, but I was going to play the movie for the back half of the event. It was an hour, because it was mentioned to me that another partner was bringing their daughter, who's 5, who was visiting internationally. But my boss thought that I would have planned a happy hour afterwards or something. I didn't think so. Anyways, I went through with the party and it went really well. I ended up not buying any alcohol and just went through with pumpkin painting over some Halloween music, candy, and fresh-baked cookies, and some warm apple cider. The people who partook in the mystery coffee pods liked their flavors for the most part. As for the event, not everyone in the office showed up, including my boss, but about 75% did. About 3 others were in costumes, and they all had a decent time. Their daughter also had a good time decorating cookies and watching Charlie Brown while waiting for her dad. All in all, I think I'll leave the adult party planning to my slightly older coworker. She's the social butterfly of the office, but I'm just glad that today wasn't a disaster. They tell a kid fresh out of college to put an office party together. What did they expect? They should appreciate cute, campy Halloween stuff. It's Halloween. Goths hold the line. It's candy time, not pretentious cocktail hour. Bruh, your boss really sucks. Am I the jerk for moving out and leaving my mom high and dry for childcare? I, female 23, until recently lived with my mom and my half-brother and sister, Mason who's 12 and Layla who's 10. Mom has split custody with their dad, Chris. When he was little, Mason begged and begged to get a dog, but he couldn't because of my allergies. Mom and Chris split up when the kids were 5 and 3, so when Chris had his own place set up, he got them a dog from the shelter, Hulk, who's now 11. A couple of months back, Chris was evicted. His new place doesn't allow dogs, and he couldn't find anyone else to take them. So he asked Mom if she could, promising that he would be looking for somewhere that allows pets in the meantime. Mom agreed without even telling me beforehand. My allergies aren't life-threatening, but they do cause cold-like symptoms that make me feel utterly miserable and uncomfortable. I was annoyed that I hadn't even been consulted. I'd like to note that at no point have I suggested that they should get rid of the dog, and I don't think it either. I know how much the kids love Hulk and how losing him would break their hearts. What I did do was ask Mom to agree to what I thought were reasonable accommodations. 1. He does not set foot in my bedroom or the kitchen. The doors are kept shut. He has no need to go in either room. The back door to the garden is in the dining room. 2. He only goes into the bathroom when he needs a bath. That door is also kept shut. 3. I'm not responsible for the dog. If Mom's not there, then Mason and Layla are responsible for taking care of him. I'd put down food and water or let him go out to use the bathroom if I was the only one there with him, but that's it. I would only handle him in emergencies, such as to get him out of the house in a fire or take him to the vet for an emergency. Mom agreed to these, but from the get-go, they were not being adhered to. The kids were constantly leaving doors open, even my bedroom door. I found him in my room multiple times. I then discovered it was Mom too. I came home from work to see her coming out of my room after leaving some clean clothes in there for me and not shutting the door. Hulk ran in and jumped onto my bed where my clean clothes were left. I shooed him out, put the clothes back into the washing machine along with my bedding. I opened the window, then vacuumed my carpet. Mom thought I was overreacting. This continued for a while, and my complaints fell on deaf ears. I started to consider moving out. My friend and her boyfriend have their own place with a spare room they've offered to me before. I turned it down initially because I had things good at home. Mom didn't charge me rent. I only pay a portion of the food shopping, so I could put most of my money into savings. In return, I helped to look after the kids. Mom works a rotating shift pattern. A week of mornings, 6 to 2, a week of afternoons, 2 to 10. This makes childcare difficult. On the days when Mom has custody, I get them up and off to school on her morning shifts, and on her afternoon shifts, they are now old enough to be on their own for the 2 hours between finishing school and me getting home from work. I cook them dinner, make sure they've done their homework, and enforce their bedtime. I've never minded this. They're good kids, and they don't really need looking after anymore. They're old enough to be left to their own devices. I messaged my friend and asked her if her offer was still good. She said yes, and I made arrangements to move in a few weeks' time. I wanted to give my mom a reasonable amount of notice. Mom wasn't happy about this. She asked what on earth she was going to do about childcare now. I told her that they're old enough to get themselves up and off to school. Literally, all I did was wake them up and see them off. They got themselves dressed and their own breakfast sorted, and they already let themselves in after school anyway. Plus, I'd only be 5 minutes away. I'd come straight away if they need me. I can understand not wanting them cooking. Layla doesn't know how, and Mason forgets to turn the oven off. But if she doesn't start work until 2, she can cook them something to warm up in the microwave. She just said, no they can't, and then trivialized the whole situation about how it was silly to get upset over some sniffles, how she agreed to my outrageous conditions, so why am I complaining? I moved out as scheduled. Mom only spoke to me either to argue or to try to use the kids to guilt me. Apparently, she didn't expect me to go through with it. I moved out this morning. My dad borrowed a van and helped me move my stuff, and he said it's a silly reason to move out. It's not like being around a dog is gonna hurt me. At this point, it's not even about the dog. It's about her not treating me with basic respect after I have helped her raise her kids, then using those same kids to guilt me. She keeps calling me, asking when I'm gonna come back. The latest one sounded like she was genuinely crying. She was apologizing and said she doesn't know what she's going to do on Monday. She's in at 6, still refuses to accept they're old enough. I've got family texting me, telling me to stop acting like a brat and go home. How dare I upset my mother who's been so good to me? How dare I abandon her kids? So Reddit, am I the jerk? Edit. First, a lot of people are recommending various medications to me. My GP has tried me with a few different medications. They do lessen the symptoms, but I still experience them. I'd also be wary about buying over-the-counter to try, as I am on other medications besides these. Secondly, a lot of people are unfairly calling Chris a deadbeat. He really isn't. He has them 50% of the time. He actually suggested changing their custody arrangement so he can have them on the week she's working afternoons. Mom didn't want to deal with going to court. I'm fairly certain you don't have to if both parents agree, but no one listens to me. Also, the reason he was evicted was because his landlord sold the house. Not his fault. Some people are saying they're too young to be alone. There's no minimum legal age to be alone in the UK. I was 10 when I started being left alone. When I was younger, I had an older cousin that babysat me sometimes from when he was about 12. Usually, my nan had me when Mom and Chris were working. This was before Layla and Mason were born. She passed when I was 10, which was when I started being left alone. At the time, my dad lived further away. I was 16 when Mom and Chris split. That was when I started looking after them before and after school. They were 3 and 5, so needed more looking after than they do now. I did get paid at that time. It turned into free rent when I left school and started working. Mom did my laundry that day. I did it other days. My clothes always went in with everyone else's because it saved energy. I wasn't some lazy freeloader letting my mom do everything. Not the jerk. You are not your mother's servant. Although you are right to worry about what her apparent lack of self-sufficiency means for your siblings, this is absolutely not a reason for you to put your own life on hold. OP is 23. Did her mom think free childcare was gonna last forever? Not the jerk. You aren't required to live at home because it's convenient for your mom, and you darn sure aren't required to live in a place where you're constantly subjected to allergens and sick. Not the jerk. But wow, your mom is a piece of work. First she had you and is no longer with your dad. Way to go, Mom, having a kid with someone you're not going to be with long term. Then she has 2 more kids with this Chris guy, and her relationship with him fails too. Now she's treating you like a slave. I can see why these 2 men she decided to have kids with didn't stick around with her. Families are supposed to have a mom and a dad. One is supposed to work, and the other is supposed to raise the kids. Your mom, and so many others like her, will never have that because they are broken, lost, sick people, and giant, massive walking red flags. Imagine her trying to get a decent man now with all her baggage and entitlements. Am I the jerk for wanting to invite friends to my daughter's wedding? I'm 68, female. My daughter is getting married to her partner of 8 years in September. We have been arguing over this, and she told me to post this here for opinions. For context, I'm paying for the whole wedding. She's pretty introverted and doesn't have a lot of friends she wants to invite. Her husband-to-be on the other side is very extroverted and has a lot of people he would invite given the chance. I thought it would be fair that the bride's side gets 30 invites and the groom's side gets 30 invites, as we are on a budget. Since my daughter doesn't have a lot of people and there are spots on her side left over, after her family and friends, I have people I want to invite. Between my husband and I, we have 13 people to invite. To be honest, there was no leaving them out one way or the other, as we have social obligations to invite them anyway. I feel as though since we are paying for this and we are hosting it, we should get a say in who comes regardless. Of course you should, you're paying for it. But I already know these people are gonna hate you. Reddit, man. My daughter has said that this is not how it normally works and that her and her fiancé should have first priority in who comes, and the spots should be dedicated to her fiancé's friends before mine if there are limited seats. She also said that this is their wedding and not my class of 74 reunion. Well then how about you keep your class of 74 money and let her pay for it herself? But him and his family are not financially contributing to this at all. It will reflect poorly on me if I don't invite my and my husband's people. She's refusing to see my side and says that her fiancé being limited in his guests and his parents only being allowed to invite 2 people because they aren't in a place to contribute is unfair. If I'm not allowed to throw this up to my standard, I do not want my name on it. They can do what they want, but I have half a mind to pull my money from the equation if they insist on not allowing who I want to be there. Well, that's exactly what you should do at this point. You're paying for the whole thing. I told them they will have full control over everything else. It will still be their day. I just want my friends there to support the big day. Is that really so wrong? Am I really the jerk? I'm starting to think I have a bridezilla and groomzilla on my hands. Because you do, you totally do. After seeing replies, I would like to add some information. We are white and live in the US, so we're not of Asian culture. We have a lot of family, so the breakdown of my daughter's side is 14 family members, 3 of her friends, and 13 of mine. She says she doesn't have a problem with me inviting my friends. She has a problem being limited and her fiancé's friends. Well, how about she chips in to pay for it then? My social obligations to my friends are because I've known some of these people for 50 plus years, and I don't want to ruin friendships that strong. I was invited to their kids' weddings, so why would they not be invited to my kid's wedding? My son opted to not have one, so this will be my only opportunity. Karen Aunt shows up in the middle of the night demanding to live with me. We recently had an election in the US. My aunt supported one side, while her husband and adult offspring supported the other side. The election did not go the way that my aunt wanted it to. My aunt proceeded to flip out, breaking things and yelling at them. Her husband called the cops. The cops declined to arrest her for anything, but suggested that she find a different place to stay for the night. This happened yesterday in New Jersey. Fast forward to 2 a.m. today. Here I am sleeping peacefully in my home with my family, over 500 miles away from all of that drama. My fence alarm goes off, waking me up. I don't know if it's a bear or a trespasser. Turns out, my aunt cut the lock off of my front gate because she couldn't get in, and I wasn't answering my phone. Why did she have bolt cutters in her car? So I ask her, "What are you doing?" She starts crying and screaming. Mind you, this is at 2 a.m. in a quiet rural community, about how the devil took her family and they threw her out. And she says that since she has nowhere else to go, I need to let her in so that she can stay in my guest room for a while. I told her one of my guildies is using that room right now. The room is occupied. The person came all the way from Texas out to West Virginia to hang out with me. I'm not gonna toss them out with 30 seconds of notice because my aunt showed up. So she decides to call the police and tell them that I'm keeping her from entering her home. We're out in the woods, so the cops don't get here quick. 4:41 a.m., the cops show up. I see them talking to her in my driveway. She shows them the bolt cutters and the ruined lock. A few minutes later, the officer knocks on my door. "Your tenant claims that..." I immediately cut him off, and I tell him that I do not even have a tenant. I own and occupy this structure. I offer to show him the deed. Well, this woman claims. I cut him off again. What's the address on her ID say? At this point, the cop is upset at me. I can tell, so I try to de-escalate the situation. Look, man, she doesn't live here. She has never lived here. That's my aunt. She lives in New Jersey. Please check her ID card. The cop calms down a bit and lets me know that he will talk to her and then come back. About 10 minutes later, the cop comes back to my door. 3 of them this time, not just the one from earlier. One of them had stripes and a rocker on his arm, so I could tell he was important. He asks me if there's any way Aunt can stay here for the night because she's too drunk to drive, so he can't let her back on the road. I told him that no, she cannot stay here, but that I'm sure there's room in the local jail. The cop asks me if she can just sleep in her car in my driveway and leave in the morning. I told him absolutely not. When she wakes up in the morning, I would just have to call them to come get her off my property, so that would solve nothing. I asked them to remove her from my property. Long story short, her car got towed and she's in the drunk tank. No charges pending for the night. So much for sleeping tonight. My kids need to be up for school soon. Crazy how all the cops refused to arrest her. If you wanted to, you could have asked to press charges for destruction of property due to her taking a bolt cutter to your lock. Even more so if she did any damage to the gate, also for trespassing. This woman drove over 500 miles inebriated, trespassed on private property, destroyed private property, lied to the police, and still didn't get arrested? I would be pressing charges for the trespassing and the property damage, then remind her it would have been cheaper to get a hotel room. Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you have let your aunt stay with you or not? Please let us know. Absolutely not. Don't we all have at least one aunt or uncle who acts like this? Am I the jerk for refusing to drive my stepdaughter home after my husband voluntold me to? So my significant other and I have a daughter together, and he has a daughter with someone else. Admittedly, he has a strained co-parenting relationship with the mom. She's 5, and I picked her up to visit this morning. My significant other doesn't drive. We had a great day together and had plans to go for dinner. He called the mother and said we had reservations at 6 and she could pick her up after. We had some very mild snow in the area today, and the mother asked my significant other if he could bring her home instead because she wasn't comfortable driving. He told her yes without even asking me. I too am uncomfortable driving when the weather is less than desirable, and not to mention I had already driven half an hour there and half an hour back to pick her up this morning. Plus driven us all around the city in the afternoon having fun with the kids. So he tells me that I'm now driving her home, to which I say, no? Why can't her mother pick her up? And he says she doesn't want to drive in the snow. So I say, well, what about me? You know I don't like driving in this either. Plus, I already picked her up, and you didn't even ask me. Significant other blows a head gasket in front of the kids and starts losing his mind on me, telling me that I'm being irrational and that I'm ruining everything. He also had some colorful word choices for me. I packed up both kids in the car and drove my stepdaughter home on that moment because I didn't want her to be involved in seeing her father acting like this. She was upset and scared and told her mother she doesn't want to ever come back to my house. The mom isn't upset with me, but my significant other is now accusing me of making his access to his kid even more strained. I told him he needs to be considerate of other people and stop making plans for others when he doesn't have a license, and that he should be asking me to do things instead of just assuming I'll play taxi driver. So Reddit, am I the jerk? Update. Significant other's parents think I'm a total jerk. They said I should have just kept quiet and dealt with it the following day instead of standing my ground, and that I should have cut significant other some slack. Not the jerk, but now you know why he is an ex and why they have a strained relationship. Yup, if OP is smart, she'll bounce before she has a kid with him and deal with the same BS as his ex has to deal with. OP, we have a 10-year-old, and we've been off and on since 2008. Try staying off with him permanently. So let's see. 1. Significant other lost his license for a DUI, got a 3-year suspension, even though a first offense is usually a year, which you didn't seem to find odd, and makes you drive him everywhere. 2. Significant other got a girl pregnant while you were on a break and broken up, and for some reason you got back together and are now taking care of this kid on his days. 3. Significant other, without asking you, agrees for you to drive his kid back to the mother in inclement weather. 4. When you object, significant other blows a head gasket and starts screaming at you. You've not mentioned anything about this, but is this guy employed? If so, are you expected to shuttle him back and forth to work as well? What exactly is he bringing into this relationship? Not the jerk for this, but you're the jerk big time for keeping this guy around. Not the jerk. Notice stepdaughter's mom didn't blame you because she knows what your significant other is. She probably feels sorry for you. Your significant other scared his daughter to the point that she doesn't even want to go back. That's your life now. Do you want your own kids to feel that way? This is more than driving in the snow. He needs anger management. Don't allow him to behave that way to you alone or in front of the kids. If he is always like this, you need to take the kids and leave. He didn't mind you risking everybody in the car in the snow and seemingly didn't ride with you. And does he not drive because he can't, or is it because he lost his license? Karen demands I make my house wheelchair accessible. I'm 22, female. My cousin is 24, male, and he's getting married next weekend. He proposed to his girlfriend, who's 25, on Wednesday and wants to get married by the next Saturday. They want to hold the ceremony at our grandparents' house, which I've the legal inheritance of. I've no objections to them wanting to get married there or anything. Also, there's no reason to technically rush the wedding, but they say they are in a very happy place and want to be married ASAP. Well, whatever rows their boat. They want to hold the ceremony in the backyard, and there's this platform of sorts where they want the wedding party to sit at reception. The thing is, one of their bridesmaids, who's about 24 or 25, is a wheelchair user, and so they want to add a ramp to the platform. Now the conflict is, they've asked me to get a ramp there. I've talked to the contractor who's done most of the furniture and stuff in that house, and he says he can only get to it next month. He's busy with some personal affairs. I told my cousin this, and he and his fiancée are very mad at me when I refuse to hire a different contractor or get a quick work done. I've offered to attach a temporary ramp, the detachable kind, which I could rent from a nearby shop instead. The bridesmaid is refusing this, saying she deserves a better accommodative and accepting facility. Thing to be noted is, the cousin doesn't want to pay for ramp construction since it's not his house, and doesn't even want to pay any percentage of rent for ramp. Also, the rest of the house is wheelchair accessible since my grandma needed it, including washrooms. It's only this platform for some reason that has no ramp, but only stairs. I don't want any sloppy or expensive ramp done in a rush because I don't have that kind of money saved or want to compromise the quality. The bride texted me saying she and my cousin have always walked on eggshells around me to make accommodations for my handicap and feelings. This is the least I can do for them. For reference, my handicap is my autism. It's never occurred to me it's a handicap or issue for people, at least family, to be around me. When I talked to my parents about this, they were very angry at her and have refused to attend the wedding where their kid is being disrespected. When my aunt, the groom's mom, found out about this whole thing, she was red angry and said she might not attend the wedding either. Now the bride is calling me a jerk and an instigator. Am I the jerk? Edit. Mostly everyone saying I shouldn't let them host the wedding there seems unfair, since it was his grandparents' home too. But yes, I may not attend the wedding. It's disrespectful, I can see. Of course you're not the jerk. The temporary ramp is a common solution for situations like this. Frankly, I've even seen wheelchairs just manually lifted over obstacles by a couple of capable helpers, and no one batted an eye at that either. Honestly, a temporary ramp would be better than a rush job, because a rush job might result in faulty workmanship. And who do you think this wheelchair user is going to blame if she gets hurt? OP trusts their usual contractor, so there's absolutely no reason for them to hire someone else to accommodate a rushed wedding. Not the jerk. Your house is not a wedding venue. It's your home. Any and all expenses for them using or modifying should first be approved by you and paid for by them. It's enough of a favor to let them use your home. Do you realize the time and effort that's going to be on you to have a whole bunch of people in and out of your home, using your bathrooms, your kitchen, etc.? The cleaning before and after, the paper supplies, sewage, water use, and more. Yeah, you're not the one who should be bending backwards for this event. In fact, you wouldn't be to blame if you changed your mind because of their ridiculous demands and expectations. Way too much. My brother uses a wheelchair, and I asked him about this. His opinion is that the bridesmaid is full of it. Not the jerk. They're taking advantage of you. A temporary ramp is a very reasonable and convenient alternative. It's interesting that in this entirely wheelchair-accessible house, they pick the most inconvenient spot and ask you to deal with it. You don't owe them your time, money, or house, OP. It sounds like someone is salty you inherited the house from your grandma. Your parents need to do a bit more to support you. They clearly see what these people are doing, and they need to step up and mediate things or find someone with a backbone in your family or community that will stand by your side. Am I the jerk for not sharing my lottery winnings with my girlfriend? After winning the lottery, I was excited about the possibilities it could bring to my life. However, when I shared the news with my girlfriend, she immediately started pressuring me to give her a substantial amount of the winnings. She argued that we had been together for a significant amount of time and that she had supported me throughout our relationship. I explained to her that the money was a personal windfall and that I had plans for it, such as investing in my future and taking care of my family. I also mentioned that we had never discussed sharing finances or making joint decisions about money before. Despite my explanations, my girlfriend became increasingly angry and accused me of being selfish and greedy. She claimed that I was prioritizing money over our relationship and that I should be willing to share my newfound wealth with her. Feeling overwhelmed and hurt by her demands, I decided to end the relationship. I believed that her insistence on me giving her the money was unfair and showed a lack of understanding and respect for my boundaries. Now I'm questioning whether I made the right decision and if I'm the jerk in this situation. Info: I won $200,000 from the lottery. She demanded at least $150,000. When you say supported, how did she support you? We've never had to financially support each other or anything, so you could say moral support. And I live in Canada if that helps. Did you buy the ticket together in some way? If so, I would personally share it with her, depending on how your economy is set up. Not saying 50-50, it totally depends on how your economy is run. You kind of give little information, and the dating for 2 years feels vague. Not saying that you're hiding something, it's just not a lot of information. You say nothing about how you came into possession of the ticket. My question is, did she indeed support you the majority of your relationship? If so, yeah, you kind of owe her a thank you amount. But it sounds like you're okay with not being responsible for yourself to begin with, since she was taking care of you at all to begin with. Do you live with her? She may be entitled as common law. I can't tell you what to do, but if my boyfriend literally won $200,000 and never had to work again a day in his life and expected to not share some of that with me, I would be gone. That would be a huge red flag showing me how greedy he is and unwilling to share. What does one person even need that much money at one time for? Ah, Reddit. The only place you'll find people who think you can retire and never have to work again after winning $200K in the lottery, which would be far less than that after taxes. Well, I mean, maybe you could retire if you want to live under a bridge or something. Some of these people just don't have a very good understanding of finances. Well, why should they? Mommy's the one who's supposed to pay for their weddings, right? Not again, Reddit boy. Am I the jerk for telling my aunt to keep her gifts since my kids couldn't care less about them? I have 2 toddler sons. They're just like any other toddlers and are pretty self-absorbed. Currently, one adores cars and the other loves the color red. Toddler 1 won't play with anything but cars, and Toddler 2 will only play with red toys. My mom hosted a party the other night, and one of my aunts came. She bought a bunch of gifts for all the kids. The older kids were respectful and accepted their gifts, but my sons simply glanced at the toys, noticed they weren't cars or red, and moved on to something else. I thanked her for the toys and made a joke about how unpredictable toddlers are after realizing she looked upset, but she rolled her eyes and said, "That was rude." I told her they're toddlers, and she said, "So? My kids knew how to say thank you by the time they were 3. I told her they can say please and thank you, but they're still learning. She made a noise and said, "Learning to be rude?" I told her she was being a little insensitive and that they're literally babies. They don't even understand the concepts of being rude and ungrateful. She got annoyed and said, "Fine then, don't expect any more presents after today," and that she hated entitled parents like me who are blinded by their kids and think that they can do no wrong. I said, "Whatever," and told her that she could keep the gifts she bought for today since my kids couldn't care less about them. She got all red in the face and said now she knows why the boys are so rude, but I just grabbed the kids and my husband and left. I was extremely angry at the moment, but now I'm just in disbelief. Who gets offended by a toddler? My mom says my aunt is very upset with me and is threatening to uninvite us from her Christmas dinner. Aunt is hosting this year, unless I apologize and promise to raise my kids better. My mom thinks we're being ridiculous and I should just say sorry, but I said no. Am I the jerk? I just can't wrap my head around why she's so angry. Edit. First, to be more specific, the boys just turned 2. Second, I feel I made this clear, but I apologized and thanked my aunt before anything else. The boys had already run off to their dad and were preoccupied with him by the time I got to my aunt, so dragging them over and trying to maybe get a thank you out of them felt like a waste of time for all of us. I'm not saying she isn't allowed to feel hurt, but she didn't have to say all those things about my kids. I've explained this in the comments. People still think I'm in the wrong, but a few people are saying to include it anyways. The boys don't really speak. Yes, they're 2, and I'm sure your 2-year-old niece or nephew can speak several languages, but my sons barely say mommy and daddy sometimes. It's not something concerning, but I didn't think it was worth the time to drag my kids back to me and my aunt and get them to say thank you, which they won't even acknowledge me until about 10 minutes in, and they'll just stare. Sometimes I can get a noise or a sound out of them, maybe an ooh, but I figured my aunt had better things to do than wait that long. I sincerely believe that there was no reason for her to get so angry, but I understand that I was wrong and will apologize. We won't be attending her Christmas party though. She's not offended by your toddlers. She's offended by your behavior in response to your toddlers. Did you not get that? Her entire point was that when your kids are rude, it's your job as their parent to guide the right response, and you didn't do that here. Everyone sucks here because you both overreacted. You're the jerk. I don't think it's so much that she was offended by them, but by you straight up allowing them to be rude in her home and doing absolutely nothing about it, and instead, you made up excuses. As a parent, you should be trying to correct that behavior now so it doesn't persist as they grow up. How hard would it have been to say thank you to your grandma for the presents, or something along those lines? What do we say? Would have worked also. I could go on. Say you're sorry. Everyone sucks here. They are indeed learning to be rude. It's okay if they forget, but it's your job to remind them. On the other hand, she's also severely overreacting, but she's initially not wrong. Edit. To everyone answering that your 2-year-olds can't say thank you, it doesn't have to be the exact words, but any kind of reaction like a hug or something, not just letting them run away to their dad like nothing happened. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her aunt? Please let us know. You know it would have been hilarious if the 2-year-old took the toy from the aunt, looked her right in the eye and said, "Thanks, Aunt Molly. I really appreciate the gifts." Whoa, Karen, I didn't know you could talk like that. There's a lot of things I can do that you don't know about, Reddit boy. Am I the jerk for telling my kids that if they don't come to my wedding, I will not be attending theirs? I'll start at the beginning. My ex-husband was a good father, but a terrible husband. I divorced him when my oldest was 14 and my youngest was 10. Well, he ended up spiraling, and the kids were exposed to that. I was blamed for ruining their dad. He got better after a few years, but ended up doing it again when he learned I was dating. So the kids kept trying to get me to not date since it would affect their dad. It was an awful time since to the kids, I was still responsible for what he did and how he reacted to things. In the end, I just kept my dating on the low end, which wasn't hard since it wasn't introducing the kids to the guys I was dating. All I had to change was not posting on social media. Also, yes, I sent the kids to therapy. They all stopped when they turned 18, or my middle kid refused to talk, so I pulled him. My oldest is now 25 and my youngest is 21, and I got proposed to. I set them down and told them. They were not happy and were still upset that I was doing this to their dad. Lots of talks later, and I thought it was good. The wedding is in 2 weeks. I got a text from all the kids saying they will not be at my wedding, that they need to support dad during this time. I had enough and texted them that if they don't come to my wedding, it will damage our relationship and I will not be attending their own weddings when they get married. They were upset and it started an argument, and all of them think I'm a huge jerk. I truly hate that I can't do anything that makes me happy since it will affect my ex. Update. I realized that I'm okay letting them go. I can't do it anymore. I sent a text, it's up to them if they want to go or not. If they do, I have hope to fix this relationship. If not, I'm just done. I can't keep playing this game. It's for everything. Anytime I have something good, his feelings have to come first. I can't do that anymore. It hurts too much. I could tell them everything he has done, but I don't feel like blowing up their image of him. Update 2. Someone private messaging me convinced me to lay it all out for them, so I did. Well, I got my response. They called me a liar. Even with showing old screenshots that were in our divorce case. I think it's over. Thanks for everyone that tried to help. I know this was a no-win situation. Not the jerk. They're adults now, and they should realize that you are under no obligation to stay single to appease your ex. They are not the only people who have had parents divorce, and yet it seems like they can't get over it. And if after all this time your ex is still emotionally impacted by your personal life, then he needs to get on with his life and get help because it's not healthy. Also, assuming that they want you to go to their weddings in the future, are they expecting you to go solo and not bring your husband? Not the jerk. You're allowed to move on. You don't need to put your personal life on hold just because it doesn't sit well with your ex. Your kids need to be supportive of both their parents. They're no longer bratty teenagers, they're adults now. On the other hand, some info is missing. How is your relationship with your kids? Did they live with you after the divorce? When it comes to the ultimatum, I still don't think you're a jerk, but the approach might not work. It may have been more effective to communicate how hurt you felt and why, including understanding in detail why they are so against you dating anyone and not being supportive of you. But now if they come, you would not feel good about it, as you may feel that you forced them to. I would say though that it seems your kids have way bigger issues with you getting married to someone else than just your ex, since it's a big step to decide not to come to your wedding. So try digging deeper and understanding what it is. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her kids? Please let us know. Those kids sound like they have more issues than People magazine. And how long has our ex been crying about this now? Dude, that guy needs to get some hobbies or something. Never allow yourself to remain a prisoner to the past. Our thoughts and actions in the present is what shapes our future. Wow, Karen, you can say some pretty insightful things sometimes. What, you thought I was just a pretty face? I just found out that 4 of my 5 kids are not mine. My wife won't say anything about it. My world has been turned upside down over the last couple of weeks. I met my wife when we were in high school and we married in college. We have 5 beautiful kids together. Really, I consider them a total blessing regardless of what I'm about to bring up. And up until a couple of weeks ago, I thought that we had the perfect marriage. We were the typical high school sweethearts. We go out together. We never fight. I feel like I've done everything a loving husband should do. I'm saying this not to make myself out as the perfect husband. For example, my work has always meant I work long hours and maybe haven't always been there when she needed me. But I want to stress that I've never felt our marriage was in any trouble, and never in a million years would I ever have suspected my wife of being disloyal. She's always done everything she could to support me and to take care of our kids. Now, my eldest daughter recently had an ancestry test done, and the results of the ancestry test strongly suggested I was not her father. She confided this to me privately, showing me the results, and I could tell she was visibly upset by this. Of course, the first thing I did was reassure her that no matter what, she's my daughter, and I'll always love her unconditionally. But secondly, the 2 of us decided to get an official paternity test since the ancestry tests are not completely reliable. It comes back I am indeed not her biological father. This news really broke me. I'm ashamed to say I broke down in tears in front of my daughter. The combination of finding out about my wife's infidelity and how upset I was making my daughter by how I was reacting. I really wish I had kept it in for her sake, but I didn't. Following this, I asked my other kids, except my youngest, to come and see me. I wanted to know the extent of my wife's infidelity. If it was a one-off, I could maybe work past it, especially given with how long ago it was. However, I didn't want to tell my youngest as she is still in school, a teenager, and I really didn't think it was appropriate to tell her yet. We tell the other 3 what has happened. I reassure them that I love them unconditionally and that I'll always be their dad, but that I need to know how long this has been going on. I can't begin to explain how touching their reaction was. They didn't care I wasn't their biological father. They were just upset at how heartbroken I was. I feel like the only thing that has kept me going these last couple of weeks is their unwavering support. So we have paternity tests for each of the 3 done. Not only are none of them my biological kids, but 4 of my kids have 3 different fathers, which somehow made it worse. It's like she wasn't just having an ongoing affair, she was having multiple. I can't explain how this makes it worse, but it just does. So I confront my wife with this, expecting her to confess and beg for forgiveness. She doesn't confess. She doesn't even take it seriously. She says the tests must be flawed. All 4? How am I supposed to take that seriously? I keep bringing it up and she keeps brushing it off, getting progressively more annoyed at me. When I bring it up, she'll try and guilt trip me. We've been together since high school. Do you seriously not trust me? Etc. But how am I supposed to trust her in the face of such overwhelming evidence? Now that I've rambled and explained what has happened, I guess let me ask a few direct questions for advice. How can I reassure my kids this doesn't change anything between us? I feel like the way I have reacted, total breakdowns, have made them second guess this, despite however many times I reassure them. How do I handle my youngest daughter? I feel like our marriage is beyond saving, and I'll need to tell my daughter something. I don't want her to know the truth until she's older, but I also don't want my wife lying and making me out to be the bad guy. Is there any way at all, anything I can do to save my marriage? I've been with my wife my entire life. It's almost impossible to see a life without her. I know that the answer should be a clear leave her, but we have 5 kids together. If there's anything that can be done to save our marriage, I want to consider it seriously." Well, hey, at least OP didn't ask for a paternity test back when his wife was pregnant, because according to Reddit, nobody ever has the right to ask for that. Yeah, remember the story where the guy had been told by multiple specialists he was infertile, and then his wife got pregnant, so he wanted a paternity test and Reddit just went crazy on him? Oh, I remember that one, Reddit boy, but I wish I didn't. Am I the jerk for calling out my dog sitter for doubling her charge 4 days before our flight? My husband, 33 male, and I, 35 female, have 2 small dogs, Pip, who's 5, and Skip, who's 17. We both work and live below our means, and this allowed us to purchase a home and have some savings. We enjoy travel with the strategic use of miles, promos, and reciprocal travel friendships. I budget carefully and pre-plan everything so we have enough to live, enough to save, and enough to enjoy our lives. Aside from our regular jobs, we also watch dogs on the side. We usually do so below market rate because we understand how inflated dog sitting fees have become. We usually pet sit for around $30 per dog per day. Sometimes we even dog sit for free if they're a friend or a family member, or if it's financially tight for some of our regular clients. We love animals and we're very understanding of other people's means. This has built us a small network of people we could rely on to watch our pets until recently. A couple of our friends moved away and some have become too busy. We started using a friend of my sister-in-law named Betty. She has been charging us $30 a day for Pip and $35 a day for Skip. She stays at our house and sat for us with no issues at that rate 2 times prior. In September, I informed her that we were taking a longer trip to visit my husband's aunt for Thanksgiving as she has cancer. We told her it would just be Skip. After doing the math, it made sense to pay the fees and fly with Pip. She agreed. A few weeks before our trip, the sitter says she cannot watch Skip on Thanksgiving and Black Friday because our mom booked a cabin for them that didn't allow pets. So we scrambled to find someone to take Pip for those days. Although he does not have major medical issues and takes no meds, he is deaf, blind, has doggy dementia, and is incontinent. The incontinent part usually puts people off taking him, so we were very anxious. But after some time, we found a sitter willing to take him those days, and Betty agreed to pick him up for the remainder of the days. Then, 4 days before we leave for our trip, Betty says she will keep her rate at $65 per day because she will be traveling from the cabin, then picking up Skip. I called her out on this because we only needed to get an additional sitter because of the changes in her plans. For reference, the other dog sitter was going to charge us $50 a day. I would have booked her for the whole thing, but Betty said she would charge us just an additional day for the pickup. My husband and I both assumed it would still be at our regular rate because she had not informed us otherwise over the 3 months we had planned this. I told her it was not cool that she's doubling our rate right before we're about to fly. I didn't tell her I wasn't going to pay the extra rate. I asked for a compromise and for her to be more upfront of any extra charges in the future. Betty then grew very uncomfortable with our interaction and basically backed out of watching him entirely. Thankfully, the second sitter was free to watch him the days that she bailed on. Am I the jerk? Also, while I appreciate your concerns about Skip's impending demise, he's actually still doing okay. He has no tumors, no cancer, etc. Sometimes we take him on small walks where he drools at all the scents. He has a very healthy appetite and loves his favorite foods. He loves to snuggle when we watch TV and always loves to be in his special spot in the middle of the bed at night. You're the jerk. I feel like the core of this is a misunderstanding. She was paid $65 a day to dog sit. I understand it was split between 2 dogs, but that doesn't mean that one dog only is worth about half the price, especially when that dog is deaf, blind, incontinent, and demented. But you are the jerk for thinking that $35 is a reasonable daily rate to pay for that and pushing back. That's a massive burden and a ton of work, and I think you should be happy to throw any money at it you need to. Not the jerk, because she committed to watch him and did not tell you that her fee had almost doubled. Then she ditched you for part of the trip and you had to find an alternative so late in the game. Lesson learned though, I would not trust her again. Am I the jerk for telling my half-sister that I will never be walked down the aisle by our mom's affair partner? I, 27 female, have a half-sister who's 25. We share the same mom, but she cheated on my dad while they were married, and my half-sister is the result of that. Mom ended up marrying her dad after the affair was revealed and DNA was established. Apparently, he wouldn't have married Mom if my half-sister hadn't been his. My parents shared custody of me until I was just about to turn 8, literally 2 weeks before my birthday, and then my dad passed in an accident. I was at school and it was his parenting time with me, so I saw him that day. It really destroyed me. I ended up living with my mom, obviously. I always knew about the tension between my parents and my dad and my mom's husband. I always knew about the affair because my aunt, Mom's sister, was very open about it, and she would use every opportunity to call my mom and her husband out. My mom is still married to my half-sister's dad. He tried to be a dad to me. I do think he loves me. He claims me as his other daughter, all that stuff. But I still see him as not my dad, and as the person who hooked up with my mom and got her pregnant while she was married to my dad. He does not get the fatherly role in my life now. Whenever I see him and my mom, I'm civil, but we are not close. My relationship with my half-sister isn't that close either, but I know none of this is her fault, so I try to have a sibling relationship with her. After I got engaged, she told me she couldn't wait to see our dad walk me down the aisle. That's when I told her it would never happen. And when she said it should, because he has been there longer than my dad ever was, I told her it didn't matter to me, because I would never be walked down the aisle by my mom's affair partner. She told me that was 26 years ago, and I said, yeah, it was, and I don't remember it happening. But he does not get rewarded, and I'm not disrespecting my dad's memory like that. She told me I shouldn't be acting like this, and what do I think of her when I hate her parents, and especially her dad, that much? She told me I should appreciate him more for trying to be a good dad to me, and I always rejected him and treated him like crap. Am I the jerk? I know this is about your conversation with your sister, but have you informed your mother or your sister's father? I don't see stepdad anywhere, so I'm taking it that you don't call him that either. That he will not be walking you down the aisle? Will they be invited to the wedding? Not the jerk. Choose who you want to walk you down the aisle. Put a picture up of your biological father for remembrance if you like. OP. They won't be invited, and I have not told them. But I really have nothing to do with them now, so I expect they'll figure it out. They need to know if they aren't invited. They might assume that they are, and that they don't need to receive an official invitation. Maybe in their eyes, as your parents, they are absolutely coming. I know you don't see him as a parent, but in their minds, they probably think that. Send them a registered letter if you don't want to tell them face-to-face, or an email with a red receipt. People that have zero relationship with the bride, even if it's the mother and stepfather, do not need any heads up. They don't deserve the courtesy. Well, it's not necessarily out of courtesy. It's more so they don't show up and risk causing a scene. Maybe OP should consider bouncers. Not the jerk for your decision about the wedding. You could have been a little less rude to your sister though. None of this is her fault either. Your resentment for your stepfather seems unhealthy, so you might want to reflect on that. Not as in add him to your wedding party, but as in creating the best mental health for yourself as you can. Best of luck to you. I hope your wedding is amazing and you can find a way to honor your dad during the ceremony. Goodness, I hope your sister cuts you off after this. Leave that family to be happy in peace. You have zero concept of what happened between your parents when you were a baby. Your information is coming from the completely biased source of mom's sister. And even if your dad was the saint you seem to think he was, you're throwing away a family that loves you because your mom made a mistake 25 years ago. That family deserves better than you. Grow up. Am I the jerk for selling my late grandparents' ranch, even though they asked me not to? Long story short, my grandparents used to live on this ranch for almost 60 years, and both of them passed away on this property. My mother was raised there, and so were my siblings and I, so there's quite a lot of sentimental value to the house. There's also a lot of monetary value to the property. The problem is the upkeep, especially as a single 28-year-old with a moderate paid job, which is what I told my grandfather years ago when he told me he wanted the house to be my inheritance to raise my own family like he did his. It became a running thing with him telling me I needed to get comfortable with the house for when it's mine, me saying I'd just sell it, and him arguing with me about that. He sadly passed early last year, quite suddenly and true to his word, left me the house among other assets. I decided I'd try to make the old man happy and accepted the responsibility. For the past year, I've been trying to make everything work with fluctuating success, but ultimately the house is somewhat of a sinkhole. On top of that, I've been headhunted for a job across the country with potential to move overseas within the next year. After long internal deliberations, I decided to just sell the house. When I told my sister, she lost it. She says I'm disrespecting the old man's wishes by selling it to a stranger and should rather let her and her husband have it. I told her she could have it immediately as long as she could pay the market value for the house. She thinks it's unfair to ask for money for a house I got for free and offer to stay in it, and in return, she'll upkeep it herself. I was planning on using the money from the sale for a place when I move, though, so that also wouldn't work out. There's a lot of tension now, and she's even trying to rally family members against me. I get the old man wouldn't be happy with this if he were alive, but frankly and lovingly, he isn't, and I shouldn't burden myself, right? Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. I'm not the biggest fan of venerating the wishes of the dead when it's counter to your own well-being. I think it's nice that you tried, but your grandpa was under no illusions about your feelings on keeping the ranch and the property. Definitely check for hidden treasure, cursed gold, or buried bodies before you sell. Edit to say that with the added context from OP, I think selling it to sister for fair market value is crappy. Sure, she should pay something, at least to recoup your cost for maintaining it, assuming that also didn't come from your disproportionate inheritance, but you're drifting into jerk territory for me. You're the jerk. You get a free house that grandpa wanted to stay in the family and decide your sister should pay market value? I don't see how you could be anything other than the jerk. Not saying she should get it for free, but market value for a free house? If you do this, expect it to forever impact on how the rest of the family sees you for the rest of your life. I am 100% venting here and taking it out on you, but I get perpetually angry at how it seems like the only way people in my age range can afford a house is if they get a massive inheritance. So while you are basically set for life, not having to pay a full mortgage ever again after the money you just accumulated out of nowhere, I'll be scraping by just to try and make a down payment on a house. You better not be one of those people in 5 to 10 years trying to give people advice on what made you successful without mentioning that you got a house for free and then pocketed all the money from selling it in order to buy your next house. The fact that you are so greedy and would only give it to your sister for market rate when she probably should have had 50% of that inheritance to begin with is incredibly crappy. You're the jerk. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his sister? Please let us know. Seriously, dude. Give the house to your sister and let her and her family appreciate it. My daughter wants me to pay for her expensive college tuition for a career that doesn't even pay anything. I'm 49, male, and I have 2 kids, Jake, who's 23, and Nikki, who's 17. Their mother and I are divorced. I have full custody, and she sends no support. Both of my kids are good kids and good students with good grades. Jake got into his dream school, but didn't get any scholarships. His undergrad school is one of the best schools in our part of the country, and it's expensive. I didn't want him to take out loans and have to carry debt, so I'm paying for his tuition and living expenses. The total cost is roughly $50,000 a year. He's following in our family tradition and is pursuing a career in dentistry. I'm not a dentist, but we have about a dozen dentists and oral surgeons in our family. I will also be paying for his dentistry degree. While I know it will be costly, I view this as a good investment, as he'll have a starting salary of about $120,000 as a dentist in our area. If he decides to become an oral surgeon, his starting salary will almost double that figure. Nikki is a senior in high school. Like her brother, she's a good student and will have a good chance of getting into her dream school, but she has a low chance of getting any scholarships. Her dream school is also a very good one, located in the middle of a very expensive city. Tuition and living expenses will be roughly $75,000 a year. The problem is that she's dreamt of being a teacher since she was little, and she's made it clear that she will be an education major because she wants to be a middle school teacher. The other problem is that the salary for middle school teachers in our area is $48,000 to $60,000 a year. I fully realize that she can move and work elsewhere, but I can't imagine there are many middle school teachers in the US making 6 figures. I don't view paying $300,000 plus for a career that tops out at $60,000 a year as a wise investment. I told my daughter that the state school that's 2 hours away has a good education program, and her in-state tuition and living expenses will only be about $20,000 a year. I view paying $80,000 for a teaching degree as a much better investment. I've tried discussing the matter with Nikki, but she gets distraught every time I've brought it up. She cries and accuses me of favoring Jake and being a jerk, which is not true. I told her if she picks a major with a $100,000 starting salary, I'll gladly pay for her to go to her dream school, but there's no way I'm paying $300,000 for her to be a teacher. Now she's got family members involved, Some are staying out of it, some agree with me, and some are telling me not to play favorites. I feel terrible, so I'm beginning to doubt myself. Am I wrong? Edit to answer a few recurring questions. I thought it made it clear, but apparently I didn't. I'm not limiting Nikki's education to $20,000 a year. I told her that's the max I'm willing to pay for her education degree. I'm more than happy to pay $75,000 a year if she picks another degree that will have a better return. For a while, she thought about being a doctor and fell in love with England. We have family there. So I even offered to pay for her to go to Oxford, which will be double the cost of her brother's tuition. But she's adamant about being a middle school teacher, and I'm unwilling to spend $300,000 that I worked hard for on an education degree. You're the jerk. This whole post reeks of favoritism. I hope the dentist switches to an art major halfway through. The fact that OP made this post and hasn't considered himself a jerk is completely alien to me. I wouldn't like him to be my dad, that's for sure. You're the jerk. To be fair, you should at least pay what you're paying for your son's education and let her take out student loans for the rest. You're the jerk. You are clearly favoriting your son here. He's following the family traditions, and you're happy to take on a load of debt for him, but you won't do the same for your daughter because her career choice is a problem. You only take on debt for your kid if they do the careers you want them to do. Go back to your daughter before you lose her. He doesn't say he's taking on debt at all. He's considering return on investment, as everyone who's going to college should. The return on investment should be your kid's happiness. You should feel really bad. You're paying fully for the kid who will make enough to easily pay off some loans with a great profession, and not for your daughter who wants to be a teacher, which is incredibly noble and needed in this country, to burden her with loans that she will take forever to repay because she will make crap. Because we treat teachers like crap. And guess what? Apparently so do you. You're the jerk. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know. Never ask a bunch of people on Reddit for financial advice, unless you're in the right subreddit. There are a few subs with people who are actually financially literate. Am I the jerk for letting my mother have a copy of the key to our new house, despite my wife's objection? I, 34 male, recently bought a one-story house. Note that it was purchased solely by me. My wife did not help save for it. I started saving for it before I even met her, and it's in my name. When my parents threw us a party for this happy occasion, Mom asked for a copy of the key in case of an emergency. I let her have it, which made my wife upset. She didn't say anything at the time, but she waited till we were alone, and she started arguing with me, saying that I shouldn't have let my mother have a copy of the key. I said why, since my mother is known to respect our privacy and is a very trusted member of the family. She said that she does not feel comfortable with the idea of someone else who's not a resident having a copy of the key. She also brought up how my mother didn't pay a penny towards the house, so this should disqualify her from getting the key. I said it wasn't a big deal, but she kept persisting, saying that I needed to take the key back. Quite frankly, this had me fuming. I pointed out that I'm the one who bought the house, and it's my decision to decide who gets to have a copy of the key. End of story. She screamed at me, saying that technically, she did contribute towards the house savings, back when she used to pay for our rent and daily expenses while I saved money. I told her that she was acting as if I put my mom's name on the title, which is ridiculous, but she said that I have no respect for her opinions and keep undermining her input. We've been going back and forth on it since then. She's now letting me know that if I don't take the key back, then she'll do it herself. I think she's being irrational and unreasonable, acting like that over a copy of the house key. This decision I made could save us one day in case of an emergency, but she kept downplaying it. ETA, I think it's crucial to mention that there's no conflict between my mother and my wife. They're on near perfect terms, all right? I thought that I've already established that above. You're the jerk. And that is why you can't trust no one when it comes to money. You played your wife. You probably told her that you would save for a shared home, and that's why she should support you and pay your share of the rent. Now, she didn't contribute a penny to your house. Your house. She gets no say, but your mom does. You're the jerk. I'm a bit confused as to how OP can admit that the wife paid rent while he put his savings towards a house, and then go back and say the wife didn't contribute. There's a lot of unanswered questions here. Does he really not understand that if she wasn't paying the entirety of the rent, then he would not have been able to save as much? How long was she paying rent, and how much did she have in savings before she started doing that? What was the actual agreement there? And on that note, why is the wife not making a bigger deal out of not having her name on the house? Did she agree to it for some reason that benefits her? Is this actually a bigger deal to her than OP is letting on, and that's why she's so resistant to the idea of his mom getting a key? Does he pull the "it's my house" thing often? It feels like OP left out a huge chunk of the story here. The wife's name is not on the house? Oh, that's a deal breaker. It would be for me as well, assuming the house was bought while they were married, and there isn't a very unique, very compelling reason for the wife to not want her name on the house. OP hasn't offered any explanation aside from what's in the original post, so I can only conclude he's a controlling jerk who took advantage of his wife to buy a house in his name alone and is now holding that over her. A real prize, truly. You're the jerk. Your attitude of "I paid for it" isn't on. You're married. It's our home, not my home now. In any case, your wife is right. She absolutely has financially contributed to the property. She paid the rent, which allowed you to save. Pretty disgusting of you to dismiss this. Your mother having a key to your home is a big deal, and something you and your wife both need to be comfortable with. If you aren't mature enough to make joint decisions with your wife, you shouldn't be married. I think your wife is right. You don't seem to respect her at all. Huge red flag that you only put the house in your name. You've basically used your wife to enable you to do what you want. Not the jerk. Once again, what we have here is Reddit hypocrisy at its finest. I've seen several stories on here where the wife is the one who owns the house and gets into a fight with her husband about things similar to this. Of course, when that's the case, you all side with her and tell her that it's her house and she should kick him out. I see lots of you saying you hope his wife divorces him and takes him to the cleaners. The sad thing is, OP's wife could actually divorce him for this and get half the house since they were married when he bought it, which would cause him to have to sell it and split the money with her during the divorce proceedings. All because OP wants his mom to have a key in case of emergencies. If this doesn't show you what's wrong with our society, I don't know what will. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know. If Reddit boy tried to give his mom a key to our house, I'd tell him it's probably a good idea. You never know when an emergency is going to happen. My Karen neighbor demands I make my baby stop crying. I'm the father of a 1-year-old toddler. Recently, she started teething as her molars have started to come in. First, it was the top ones for about a week. Then we had a week's break, and now the bottom ones are coming in. It's clearly causing my daughter a lot of pain, especially at night. Before, she was a good sleeper, but now it's been rough. She's been waking up around 1 a.m. and then 3 a.m. daily, screaming with her little fingers in her mouth. My wife and I have tried comforting her, bringing her in our bed. She sleeps in our room anyway, and her crib is next to our bed, but normally she likes to sleep cuddled up when she's uncomfortable. We've even given her baby Motrin to help her with the pain, but she still screams for about 10 to 20 minutes each time until we're able to settle her down. It's shrill and it sucks, but there's not much we can do beyond what we're already doing. We live on the ground floor of a new condo building. It's made of heavy concrete and decently soundproofed, but it's not perfect. Above us lives a single woman in her late 20s, early 30s. This is an expensive part of town in a new building, so we can assume she's decently moneyed. She also keeps her balcony door open all day and night, and it faces directly into our courtyard. She's been punishing us during the day by blasting loud music directly into our unit by putting a stereo next to her balcony. We're on the ground floor, and we have a fully enclosed courtyard, so it vibrates around. She's got great music taste, and my daughter will just dance to it all day long. So while my wife hates her intention, I think it's worked out just fine. Until now. Last night, she came barging down at 3 a.m. and rang our bell 4 times while we were trying to settle our daughter. Motrin works for about 8 hours, so by 3 a.m. we have to give her another dose and wait through the cries, cradling her for 15 to 20 minutes for it to kick in again. My wife, a strong-tempered petite woman, amplified by her first year of motherhood, wanted to go fight her then and there. But I said, let's just concentrate on settling the baby and ignore her. I also didn't want to make the baby any more upset than she already was. So yeah, I just let her fume outside my door at 3 a.m. Am I the jerk? Update. I delivered a small care package to her door with a long letter and a bottle of wine and chocolates. But your neighbor treated you like that and you gave her wine and chocolates? Bruh. She was not home, so I put it next to her door. We're only here for a couple of months, temporary rental until we finish construction, but I'd rather offer an olive branch than see all the pettiness continue. Yes, it sucks to be woken up, Yes, it's a shared building. Yes, people throw parties here until 3 a.m. on the weekends. Yes, babies cry and we try our best. For those who live in very big cities, mine has 22 million, this is what you experience. I'm listening to loud mariachi music from the neighbor across the way right now. Everyone sucks here. Your comments about her are awful, especially that daddy is paying her way. Her response with the loud music is childish. Is there some reason why you can't move the doses of Motrin so that it works all night? Maybe a dose at 11 p.m. That would allow all of you to get a much-needed night's sleep. Also, I think they make cold teething rings to help with pain. Try harder, for you, your kid, and your neighbor. Also, go to a doctor. How is the baby screaming loud enough to disrupt someone else's life in a, from his words, pretty soundproof building? And doctors tell you to stay ahead of the pain. They shouldn't wait until the kid is screaming to finally give her pain meds. They know she's teething. Why are they letting her reach that level of agony? Info. About giving her dose later at night. You mean there's another way than waking up the building at 3 a.m. every single night? Also, good job at deleting the daddy line, which was causing you to gain some of the you're the jerk judgments. The daddy line is still in the auto mod comment for those who want to see it. OP is the jerk for deleting it to make him sound like less of a jerk. I felt like OP used some pretty harsh and leading words to describe the neighbor, even after OP removed the daddy line. You're the jerk, and I have 4 kids. I shared a wall with college students when I had babies, so I have first-hand experience with the music versus baby conflicts. OP needs to extend an olive branch to all direct neighbors, box of muffins, or a gift card from a local coffee place with a note apologizing for the nighttime baby noise. Maybe a comment about loving her taste in music during the day for this. The neighbor bangs on his door in the middle of the night, and y'all really think he should give her gifts? Bruh. Stop it, Reddit boy. Remember your blood pressure. No, someone comes banging on my door at 3 a.m. I'm not gonna give them gifts. I'm gonna kick their. Stop it, Reddit boy. Stop it. I can't. Don't do it, Reddit boy. Reddit boy, you have ascended. It feels so good to fight. A lawyer's pro-revenge on the fraudster who stole all his money. A while back, I got suckered by a fraudster and I lost our life savings. This is the story of how I got suckered and how I got my money back, with interest. Why do you want to move our money? My wife said. Mega Bank does a pretty good job at managing it. Each month, my wife took our surplus income and dumped it into our retirement plan and other investments, and for years it had been growing. It had started out as a nest egg, but now it was actual money. Real money. Not enough to retire on, but a great start. Mega Bank is just hugging the index, I said. I was parroting a phrase I'd heard from a fast-talking fraudster who had given a seminar for the local bar association. My wife asked what it meant, and I explained. Mega Bank is basically just buying the index and charging us for the privilege. We could do the same thing they are, but without paying them a percentage. Then why don't we just do that? Let's exit the Mega Bank Mutual Fund and buy the index. That way our money is safe. I shook my head. We can do way better. The fraudster seminar had lasted barely an hour, but now I was an expert on the stock market. Look, a bunch of guys from the local bar association are all joining in with this guy. He's got a great track record. Edward Lee Shore was the man's name, and he was an investing genius. His funds had made steady returns above market for years. I showed my wife the glossy brochure I'd picked up at the seminar that morning. She took it from me and flipped through it. If he promised crazy high returns, then I'd know he was shady. But that's not what he's promising, she said. Just good, steady returns. Exactly. He's got this new thing he buys called principal protected notes, and that means you can't lose your principal. Really? My trusting wife said, and I told her, yes, really, and talked her into transferring all our funds to the Genius Investors Company, Lee Shore Investments. People reading this are going to say that I should have known this was BS right from the start, and maybe they're right. But the thing is, I didn't come for money, and when it came to finance, my BS detector wasn't very well calibrated. In the middle-class home I grew up in, money was for spending. Sure, my parents saved, sort of, but for the most part, money was for spending, and so when I reached my 30s and found to my surprise that I had surplus income, I didn't know what to do with it. I had no notion, no idea at all, until I met Edward Lee Shore, the genius investor, the man who told me what to do with my money. So my wife gave me her okay, and a guy from Lee Shore Investments came by our house with papers, a pen, and glib talk. My wife and I signed these papers here and there next to the little blue X's over and over again, and while we signed, the man talked, and when he finished talking and when we finished signing, he left. He didn't leave any copies, my wife said. I guess he'll send them to us in the mail, I said. But the man had left one piece of paper, a little blurb about the awesomeness of Lee Shore Investments and how their money was all in accounts with Mega Bank invested in principal protected notes, and so their clients' money was doubly secure, financially invincible. The blurb included the company's website, and the fast-talking sales guy had walked me through setting up our username and password. We'll be able to monitor our investments real-time, I said to my wife. Mega Bank never offered that. With them, we had to wait for the monthly statement. But now, I'm going to check out our balance every day, and if we aren't making the money that they promised, I'll let you know right away. I kept the first part of that promise, and that's the only reason I got our money back. As for the second, my wife and I disagree on whether I kept that part of the bargain. The main branch of Mega Bank was downtown, taking up the entire ground floor of the same building where I worked on the 15th floor. I walked through Main Branch almost every day on my way to court and back. The windows of Main Branch and the entire building were coated with layers of precious metal. On cloudy days, the tower looked like it was silver, and when it rained, copper. But on good days, the tower gleamed golden, and on those days, which were most days, Mega Bank reigned supreme over the financial sector. A couple of days after we gave our money to Lee Shore Investments, I was walking through Main Branch. Main Branch was as big inside as a cathedral, and I felt like I was in a church that was dedicated to money. I had no business at Mega Bank that day, no deposits to make, nothing to do, but I heard a voice call my name, and I turned. "How's it going, OP?" a voice said. It was the floor's senior financial advisor, a woman close to retirement. Mega Bank had her on a high-profile desk, the one for servicing local professionals, mostly lawyers. Not bad, I said. "Sorry to see your money's leaving us," the advisor said. Lee Shore Investments had acted fast after I signed the papers, and I was pleased to see that the transfer was underway. I explained that, technically speaking, the money wasn't actually leaving Mega Bank, that I was merely switching financial managers, that's all. "Lee Shore banks with you guys," I said. "Their office is upstairs, just like mine." "It's not quite the same," the advisor said, explaining that if a Mega Bank broker messed up, the bank was there to answer for it. But if Lee Shore lost my money, I'd be without recourse. "I know you know this," the advisor said, "and I've made this speech to a bunch of our lawyer clients over the last while, people like you who are moving their money to Lee Shore. But I have to say it, just a little warning, that's all." I made polite thank you noises, accompanied by a little nod. "And you can always come back, you know," the advisor said. "We never say no to money." I thanked her again and walked on to the elevator banks, and a few minutes later I was at my desk, logging into Lee Shore's website, using the credentials that the fast-talking sales guy had left behind after his visit. I could see all my investments online on Lee Shore's website. There were 6 facilities invested in various things. The balances for all 6 accounts fluctuated slightly right before my eyes, and next to them was a box showing green for positive, red for negative. 4 were green, 2 were red, but only slightly, and already the fund had earned a small gain. Nothing spectacular, but a gain. That night, my wife and I checked the Lee Shore's website again and saw that they had finished the day up almost 1/3 of a point. Not bad, on a day when the market was flat. The next day, I was coming back from court and was walking through Main Branch of Mega Bank. Although I had moved my investments, I was still a customer. Mega Bank had my firm's trust and general accounts, and my staff and I popped in and out occasionally to do this and that. The financial advisor spotted me and called me over. "Sorry about the delay with one of your funds," she said. "What delay?" "Your wife didn't sign one of the forms," she said, passing it over the counter. It was one of the Lee Shore investment transfer forms that the fast-talking money guy had placed before us for signature. I looked at it and saw that, like the advisor said, my wife had missed one of the signatures. "So where's the money?" I said. "Still with us. Just get your wife's signature and we'll move it over right away." I took the form with me and headed up to my office. With a coffee in hand, I closed my office door and turned on my monitor. After a few clicks, I was back on the website of Lee Shore Investments, looking at how my life savings were doing. I could see that the market was down, but my money with Lee Shore was holding its own, treading water in the unsteady market, keeping its place. I looked at the facilities, all 6 of them, and wondered how all 6 facilities could be performing well when one of the facilities had not been transferred. It didn't make any sense. Megabank had sent Lee Shore only 5 of my funds, yet Lee Shore recorded all 6 being in their hands. The proof was right on my screen. A few minutes later, I was back downstairs at Megabank in advisor's office, and we looked at her screen. "The 6th fund is still with us," she said, pointing at her screen, and I looked where she pointed, and she was right. 5 of the accounts were gone, but 1 remained, a joint investment account, the one that my wife had forgotten to sign off on. "This doesn't make any sense," I said. The advisor agreed that it made no sense. "There must be some explanation," I said, and the advisor suggested that I call Lee Shore. I used her desk phone, and when I called Lee Shore's office, the receptionist put me right through to Edward Lee Shore himself. I explained that I was with my old advisor and that I had a question. I explained the problem. "Oh, that," he said. "Sure, that happens sometimes. I would have mentioned it to you myself, but Megabank was late telling us that the transfer didn't go through." "But why does it show on your system that my money is there? Why can we see it on the screen?" Edward Lee Shore explained it to me. Something about margin and leverage, and money transfer protocols, and wires and ETFs, and making sure the customer was covered. "It's all about customer service, making sure our people are taken care of, even when Megabank drops the ball," he said, adding that I was a valued customer and he wouldn't be charging me any extra fees for making sure I was in the market while we waited for Megabank to hand over the money. "Thanks," I said, and put down the phone. I hadn't understood a word that he said. I looked across at the advisor. She had been in the business for decades, and she would be able to translate what Edward Lee Shore had just told me. "That was just a bunch of money words," she said. "I couldn't make heads or tails out of it." I didn't like that. I didn't like that at all. I'd felt a chill in my office a few minutes earlier, but that was nothing compared to what I was feeling now. "Can you transfer the money back to me?" I said. "No," the advisor said. "The money is with Lee Shore now, and we need their consent to move it." "Thanks," I said. I left her office, walking fast, then really fast, and when I reached the elevators, I pounded the up button until a door opened, and then I hammered the button for the 15th floor so far that my hand hurt. "Cancel my appointments," I said to my senior secretary as I passed by her desk. I shut the door to my office and sat at my desk, my head in my hands. Lee Shore's website was on my screen, showing my balances, but I didn't trust those balances anymore. One of them was obviously completely fictitious, showing the performance of an investment that had yet to reach Lee Shore's office. The balance on the 6th facility was BS, and if it was BS, so were the others. Edward Lee Shore had defrauded me. He had done it easily, almost without effort. He had opened his mouth, and after listening to him blah 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 for an hour, I'd gone home and persuaded my wife to give him everything we'd saved. Now we had almost nothing, and it was 100% my fault. My face burned with embarrassment and shame. First, for being taken like an ignorant guy, and second, because I did not know what to tell my wife. We had only one account of 6 left, and a small one at that. I'd lost almost everything, and we'd be starting from financial scratch. You'd think that a lawyer would be able to figure out what to do. By this point, I'd been at the bar for close to a decade, and I knew my way around the courts. But I wasn't just the lawyer this time, I was the victim, and I did what most victims do. I panicked. Before I could properly consider the matter, I swung into action and started a series of maneuvers intended to fix things, but which only made it worse. "What's up?" Edward Lee Shore said when I called him for the 2nd time that day. I explained that I had changed my mind, that my wife and I wanted our money back. I kept my voice very polite and under control. "No can do," he said to me affably. "It's a locked-in fund, guaranteed for a year at least. You're a lawyer. You ought to read the fine print. I can't let you out. It would upset the balance of the fund." I don't know why I thought politeness would work, but it didn't, and I went to my default setting when things didn't go my way for something that matters to me. "Listen," I said, "I don't give a hoot about any of that. I really don't. You've had my money for all of 5 minutes, and I want it back now." He hung up on me, and when I went up a few floors to confront him personally, his office was locked. I banged on the door. I yelled. I raged. Then I heard a voice, Shore's voice, speaking to me from the other side of the door. "You should have read the fine print," he said. "Come see me in a year." That was my first move, to alert Edward Lee Shore that I was onto him. I made more mistakes that day, but letting Lee Shore know that I was onto him was the first and the biggest. Everything that happened after that flowed from that first mistake. I was still panicking, and I was thinking like a victim, like a client. What does any client do when they're desperate and need help right away? They hire a lawyer. I was in a tall downtown building filled with law firms, and I went to the first one I could think of. The receptionist made me wait for 30 minutes while she called here and there, looking for a lawyer who was free. Finally, she found someone, and I was taken to a small office where a lawyer greeted me. I explained the problem, the amounts involved, the urgency of immediate action. "Well," the man said, "you did agree to lock in the money for a year. You should have read the fine print. You can't prove fraud, so I don't see that you have much to go on." We talked back and forth for a while, but he was firm. There was no remedy. I'd have to wait the year that I had agreed to, and then I could ask for my money back. If he doesn't give it back to you then, feel free to return and we'll help you out. That was his advice, for which he charged $1,000. I left the lawyer's office feeling way worse than I had when I'd walked in. After falling for Lee Shore's huge fraud, I'd fallen for a law firm's smaller one, paying good money for crappy legal advice. But I was still in client mode, so I went to another law firm in the same building. I went to reception, told them I had an emergency, and after a while, they took me to a lawyer's office. He was more senior than the first guy, corner office and all that, and his advice was more concrete. "Mariva injunction all the way," he said. "You give me the go-ahead and we'll have the papers filed within a day, and we'll be in front of a judge within a week." "A week?" I said. "Commercial litigation court's packed this week. 2 judges on vacation, and another is in the hospital. A week's the best I can do." "Okay, but how about an injunction of some kind, a court order to freeze the funds?" I hadn't mentioned that I was a lawyer. I'd been too embarrassed to admit that. So I had to sit there and listen patiently as he explained there could be no execution before judgment, no judgment before there was a lawsuit, and no injunction until there was a motion, and no motion unless they could get a court date, which he could not, at least for a week. "A week's plenty of time, unless your target knows you're coming." An hour earlier, I'd been outside Lee Shore's office, pounding on the door and screaming that I wanted my money right now. "I don't think we have a week," I said. I headed back to my office, poorer by yet another $1,000. I sat at my desk, stunned. I pulled off my jacket and undid my tie because I was sweating like I'd run a marathon on a hot day. I tried asking for my money back, and then I demanded it and screamed for it, but words hadn't worked. I needed more than words. I needed the court system to help me out, but the 2 lawyers I had consulted couldn't help me. "You created this mess all on your own. You should have read the fine print. You messed up, and you're going to have to fix it yourself." That's what I said to myself, and when I realized that I was all alone, that I had no one to turn to, my brain started to work once more. I went to our firm's small library and found Baldwin on banking, but after almost an hour I gave up because Baldwin was missing a chapter on what to do after someone rips you off. So I tried the book on injunctions next, but that was useless. To get a court order to freeze a bank account, you needed a judge, and I couldn't get in front of a judge for a week. So I dithered in the library for another hour, looking at this, flipping through that, and then I retreated to my office. I was panicking again, really panicking now. I had painted myself into a corner and burned all of my bridges. My law degree and a decade of practice was useless, and I had no way to fight back against Edward Lee Shore. If I hadn't panicked, if I had remained calm, I would have hired a lawyer to do the Mariva thing. And unwarned, Edward Lee Shore would have been a sitting duck. I'd blown the only thing I had going for me, the advantage of surprise. I get this nightmare sometimes, one that a lot of people get. Maybe you know the one I'm talking about, where you're back in school and you have an exam coming up and you haven't studied, you aren't prepared, you don't have time to catch up, but there's a 100% final the next day and you have one night to learn an entire course. In my dreams, I always woke up before I actually had to write that nightmare final exam, but this time it was real. I had maybe a day at most to do something, and after that, I would be finished. I picked up the phone and called my wife. "I'm teaching," she said. "You shouldn't call when I'm teaching." She was whispering, and in the background, I could hear rowdy teenagers doing their thing. "I'm pulling an all-nighter," I said. "What?" I promised that I'd tell her all about it, then I hung up. Then I went online and started to research. It was time to start studying for tomorrow's final, a 100% final, where you either scored perfect or you failed. I'd either find a way to stop Edward Lee Shore, or I'd go back home to tell my wife that I'd lost everything we had saved. By midnight, I was starting to get punchy. I had had more coffee than ever before. I was slouched over my desk, trying to find new sources, a new idea. I flipped through Baldwin on Banking again and the Canadian Encyclopedic Digest. I tried every combination of search terms I could think of on Quick Law, pulled up every case, scanned every headnote, but I'd found nothing. A little after midnight, my nightmare entered the truly desperate phase. With the textbooks and case law and all secondary sources proving totally useless, I had reached my last resort. I was reading statutes. In my area of practice, federal statutes aren't really a thing. I practice in areas under provincial jurisdiction, whereas banks are federally regulated. But in my desperation, I thought I'd try reading the Bank Act. Maybe I'd find something there. So I clicked on a link and waited for the Bank Act PDF to download. "Hurry up," I told our server when the statute took too long to appear on the screen. But I soon realized that the server wasn't the problem, it was the statute itself. When the Bank Act finally finished downloading, I saw that it was massive, almost 1,000 sections, and many of those sections were themselves big enough to be entire statutes all on their own. I had never seen a statute that big. "Gotta start somewhere," I said, as my eyes scanned the opening sections, and I started to read. I read and I read and I read some more, and I drank coffee and made notes. Earlier that evening, I'd spoken with my wife and traded some texts with her. She had asked me to come home, saying that whatever it was I was working on, it wouldn't look so bad if I got a good night's sleep. And while normally she would be right, this time she was wrong. So I kept on reading and mouse clicking and note-taking and coffee drinking, and by 2 a.m. I was barely halfway through the Bank Act when I paused. I was reading an obscure Bank Act provision about unclaimed balances, but my brain couldn't focus. I was starting to fade out now because it's not so easy to pull an all-nighter when you're pushing 40. All-nighters are for kids, and I wasn't a kid. But there was at least a small part of my brain that was still awake, still paying attention, and it gave me a little poke and told me to reread the paragraph that I'd blown past a minute before. I went back and read the provision again and again. The wording was obscure and convoluted. It hardly made any sense at all. I read the clause again and again, its words strange and almost cryptic. The words seemed to be creating a right, but doing it not with positive words, but instead using language of negation. No wonder I'd missed it the first time. The clause was terribly drafted. Really, my law brain said, if I were drafting that clause, I'd just say straight out that. And then I jumped out of my seat and whooped. The office was empty. Not even articling students work until 2 in the morning. I whooped again, but then told myself to calm down. I reminded myself that it was early morning, that I'd had no sleep, that I had no idea what I was doing, and that I was desperate. So I did a search on the Bank Act provision that I had hoped was my salvation to see if the wording had ever been cited. Surely if someone had used it before for what I wanted to use it, I'd find cases all over the place. I cut and pasted the statute section into Quick Law, I pressed enter, and nothing. Not a thing. The phrase had never been considered by a judge. There was no record of anyone interpreting the section of the Bank Act that I was hoping would save me, and my burst of enthusiasm disappeared. The brief instant of hope had energized me, and when hope faded, my remaining energy faded with it. Got no choice, I said to myself as I pulled up a document and started typing. You've already lost all your money. Might as well embarrass yourself as well. So I typed and I drafted and deleted and retyped, and when I finished, there was a statement of claim on my screen, the opening salvo of a lawsuit. It wasn't much, but it was the best I could do. I got some sleep on the couch in my office, and I didn't wake up until almost 8:30. I ran downstairs to the building's gym for a quick shower. I tried to make myself look decent, but I was in a rush. I needed to get my claim issued right at 9:30 if I was going to have a chance. But when I got there, a long line of process servers awaited me. Is it always like this? I said to our firm's process server. He was 20 places back in line. You have no idea, he said. He told me to leave it with him and he'd probably get it issued by the end of the day, but I wasn't waiting. I walked to the front of the line and opened my wallet. I got a claim that I need issued right now, and I'm paying extra to jump the line. First one who says they'll help gets a bonus. I started pulling bills from my wallet in full view of the people near the front of the line. I held a wad of bills over my head, waving them, and the process server at the front of the line said, I'll do it. When the court opened a few minutes later, my claim got issued first. It had cost me close to $200, but I didn't care. I took my issued claim and headed off at a run. I had to get to main branch of Megabank. Every second counted, and a few minutes later I arrived. By now it was 9:45, and many of the counters were open. There were already long lines, and I half walked, half ran through the branch, looking for a counter with no lineup. But everything was busy. Everything was packed, and time was running out. What's wrong, OP? My former advisor called out to me from her desk. She was serving a customer, but she could see the distress on my face and took pity on me. I got a document I have to serve on right away, I said. And when I said those words, the advisor's customer turned around and looked at me. It was Edward Lee Shore of Lee Shore Investments himself. He had a briefcase with him and a suitcase. I brushed past him and gave the claim I was carrying to the advisor. I knew that I was probably wasting my time. Seeing Shore had put me back into full panic mode. He was on his way out, that much was obvious. I'd given him a day's notice, and that's all he needed. I figured he had locked his office door for the last time and was making a final trip to Megabank to cash out, to take all his money with him. But I had a card to play, and maybe it was just a bluff, but I was going to play it anyway. I passed the claim to the advisor. "I was here first," Edward Lee Shore said, but I ignored him. I'm serving the bank with this claim," I said, "and I'm claiming ownership of some funds on deposit." I'd sued Edward Lee Shore and his company, Lee Shore Investments, and all the lawsuit said was that I was claiming ownership of money in his accounts. The claim had taken me hours to draft, but it was only 2 pages long. "Give me my money," the claim said. "Give me my money. I want my money." A ridiculous claim, really, and I felt embarrassed. But when I passed the papers to the advisor, she took them from me and began to read them over. I watched the advisor read over my paperwork. "I'll be back," she said. I thought Shore would be angry that she had taken me ahead of him, but he wasn't. Nor did he become angry when I gave him another copy of the claim and told him he was served. "You're too late," he said. "You can't do anything without a court order. You're a lawyer, you should know that. When she comes back, she's going to tell you to go away, and you know what she'll do next? She's going to send a wire pursuant to my instructions. All your stunt has done is delay me 5 minutes." Shore did not try to hide his gloating smile of triumph. The advisor returned. "Done," she said. "What?" I said. "Done what?" Shore said. "We get claims like this now and again. I had to check with the assistant manager, but that's just protocol. It's done now." "What's done?" I said again, trying not to scream, desperate to know what it was she had done. "I froze the accounts," she said. "All my accounts?" I said. "All 5? She shook her head and my heart sank, and Shore smiled. But at the advisor's next words, his smile froze on his face. "No, it doesn't work that way," she said. "I can't freeze money in an account. We have to freeze all the accounts, everything." Shore looked at her, stunned. Then he turned to me. "You can't freeze an account without a court order. You just can't." Now it was my turn to smile, and I said the words that I'd wanted to say since I first read them at 2 a.m. that morning. The words that I said were the most beautiful words I've ever spoken in my life. It's the only time I said them, but I will never forget these words. "Your accounts are all frozen pursuant to subsection 432 sub 2 of the Bank Act," I said. "Your accounts, all of them, are frozen by operation law. I froze the accounts automatically without a court order, and they will remain frozen until you get a court order to unfreeze them." "But there must be another way," Shore said. "Yes," the advisor said. "If the plaintiff consents, you can still operate your accounts, but only if the plaintiff consents." Shore turned to me. "We have to talk," he said. "Come to my office," I told him. We didn't talk for long. It was easy to reach a deal, and we were both in a hurry. He had a wire to send and a plane to catch, and I wanted my money on the spot. We typed up a letter to the bank, a letter of instructions. We both signed it, and we went back downstairs to the same counter and waited in a short line for the advisor. I was feeling pretty good now. I'd solved the problem. Everything was settled. Shore, on the other hand, was sweating now. Sometimes his face was red, other times a sickly white. He had all his chips on the table now, and he needed to cash out fast. Come on," he muttered as a customer in front of us yacked away with the advisor, taking up valuable time. Finally, the customer went on her way, and it was our turn. I presented the letter to the advisor, the letter that Shore and I had signed. The advisor took the letter from us and gave it a good and careful read. "I'll be back," she said, leaving Shore and I standing together at her counter. We watched as she went into the assistant manager's office, and when she didn't come out right away, Shore started fidgeting again. "Why did you do it?" I said. "Do what?" he said, snapping out of his funk and turning to me. "Why did you steal from people?" He explained that it was not stealing. People gave him their money voluntarily. He stole nothing. People came to him with their eyes wide open, he explained, and it wasn't his fault if they were gullible. The world was made for sharp guys like him. "But you can't be that smart," I said. "After all, I caught you, and now you're taking off, running to who knows where before other people can catch on to you." "I've been doing this for 30 years, and no one's caught me. You just got lucky. You're not smart, just lucky." The advisor returned. "For a draft this size, it needs 2 signatures," she explained. She passed me an envelope, and when I looked inside it, I almost cried. It was not a mere check, but a bank draft, good as cash, drawn on Megabank. It was my life savings, plus the premium I'd made Edward Lee Shore pay me, compensation for my time and my stress, and the financial near-death experience he put me through. "Thanks," I said. Then I handed the draft back to her and told her to reopen all of my accounts just like it was before I almost lost everything else. The advisor took the draft and turned to go, but Shore stopped her. "What about my accounts? My wire? You saw the letter we both signed. You have the consent you need." The advisor smiled and said, "Yes, of course," but then I stopped her. "You won't be sending any wires today," I told Shore. "But you agreed," he said. "It's in the letter. I saw it with my own eyes. You wrote it and signed it, and I signed it. We both consented." "I'm not so sure that's what the letter says," I said. Shore reached out to snatch the letter from the advisor's desk, but she pulled it back out of reach. I didn't need to see the letter. I remembered it perfectly. It was full of lawyer flourishes and recitals, filled with wherefores and aforesaids and heretofores, with the occasional Latin phrase tossed in. When it came to what I wanted, it was perfectly clear, instructing Megabank to give me my money in a bank draft. All this I repeated, including the letter's final words, that once I had my money back, therefore the accounts of Lee Shore Investments may operate freely as before. That's what it said. "So there's no freeze. I want my money. I want to send a wire." "But I was in a rush when I drafted that letter," I said, "and I'm not sure it has the desired legal effect. I think the bank needs to get a second opinion." The advisor thought so too, and so did the assistant branch manager when Shore started yelling. And when the branch manager herself arrived on the scene, she told Shore to leave, and she'd get back to him once the bank's legal department had given an opinion. "I'm not leaving until I get my money," Shore said, and then shouted. I turned and walked away, leaving him raving at the counter. "Our money is back with Megabank," I said to my wife when I got home that evening. "That was your all-nighter?" I explained what had happened, how I'd messed up, and how I'd fixed it. She picked up her coat and said I was taking her out to dinner. The waiter set us down, and I opened the menu. My wife snatched it out of my hand. "You're done with investing, okay? Done with the principal-protected notes and ROI and all that stuff." I nodded my head agreeably and explained that next time I'd research things way more carefully, that I'd never make a mistake like this again. My wife shook her head. "I wasn't asking," she said. "I was telling. I'm telling you that you're done with investing. The money stays in Megabank and an index fund." My wife meant it too. Ever since then, when I bring my monthly draw home, she dumps the surplus into that super boring index fund at Megabank, where it's safe from the Edward Lee Shores of the world and the dummies like me who fall for people like him. I hired a babysitter so I can go golfing twice a month. My wife isn't happy about it. My wife, who's 39, and I, 41 male, have been married for 12 years and we have 3 kids, who are 10, 7, and 4. I got in on the ground floor of a startup about 20 years ago, and the business has since grown exponentially. I'm now in an executive level position. My wife works in retail. About 18 months ago, my wife was offered a promotion that would include a relatively small bump in pay, but would require her to start working weekends, something she was able to avoid previously. They also dangled a carrot in front of her in the form of this promotion, leading to a bigger and better promotion. She was very excited about the opportunity when she told me about it, but I expressed some concern about her having to work weekends. She would have to work 5 to 6 weekend shifts every month, so pretty much 3/4 of the weekends every month. I told her that's asking a lot of her when the bump in pay isn't that much, especially when we don't particularly need the extra money. But she was so excited to advance her career that she disregarded my concerns and accepted the position. Since she started the new position, I've told her many times how I'm feeling stressed and burnt out by not really having breaks during the week. I work a stressful job 5 days a week, and then I have to go into solo parent mode almost every weekend. On the weeks my wife works weekends, she gets 2 days off during the week pretty much all to herself, especially during the school year. Yes, she uses this time to run errands and do things around the house, but she also uses it to meet up with friends and do things for herself. I don't have free time to do similar things for myself. My weekends are filled with activities for the kids. The one weekend a month my wife doesn't work is allocated as family time at the request of her. Whenever I brought this up to her, she would tell me that her position is temporary until she gets another promotion, but that hasn't happened yet. This summer, I started hiring a teenage babysitter in our neighborhood to watch our kids for a few hours twice a month on Saturday so that I can go golfing with my friends. It's done wonders for my stress level, and the social interaction greatly improves my mood. The kids look forward to it as well because they like the babysitter. When I first told my wife about this, she was upset because not only am I spending money on a babysitter just for myself, I'm also spending money on golf, which pretty much cancels out the money she makes that day or even more. When I told her how much better I feel having time for myself, she tells me that I should do that in a way that isn't so expensive. The last time she brought this up, I reminded her that even after her promotion, I still make over 2 times what she does, and that her bosses probably lied to her about another promotion because no one else would take the position that she did. She got mad at me for insulting her career and for spending hundreds of dollars every month just on myself. Not the jerk. You need a break. Mental health is important. If it doesn't hurt your family's financial situation, it's money well spent. Not the jerk. She forced solo parenting on you. You're simply making the best out of a bad situation that she unilaterally created. If it were me, I'd increase the number of hours and days to make it a real break, not just a few hours. But I'm a jerk. Not the jerk. And your wife was a fool for taking that promotion without a timeline and written contract stating when the other promotion was to happen and what it entails. What she got isn't so much a promotion as it's just a means of getting someone to work the weekends, and the raise is probably little more than the differential many retail places pay for working undesirable shifts. It doesn't sound like the money you're spending on golf is a hardship. Denying you that outlet would just lead to other issues. Yeah, you could spend a couple evenings a month out with the guys, but that's not something you'd want to do after working all day, and if you take a weekend evening for it, she'd complain that it's cutting into the time you have to spend together. I think your wife jumped at the word promotion without actually thinking it through. Either she gives up a day of her family time to cut the cost by 1 day of babysitting fees, or she accepts that the cost of a couple days of golf a month is worth it for the physical and mental health benefits to you. Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of Reddit Podcast Stories, where today, am I the jerk for telling my niece it's her fault that my horse kicked her? I, 27 female, have a niece who's 14. She's the daughter of my older brother, who's 36, and his wife, who's 34. She's a very sweet girl, and she loves my horses and the other horses I board, which are my friends. My brother and his wife live in the city, while I live in my uncle's ranch on my mother's side in a different state. My brother and I have different moms, but the same dad. They sent my niece to come stay with me for a few months, which I greatly accepted. She's been good, and she calls her friends back at her home state and FaceTimes her parents once in a while. She's a great help with feeding my animals and my horses. The only problem is she doesn't know how to ride horses and sometimes teases the horses. I have 2 very young horses, a filly and a colt, which are both very excited horses, and I don't really allow her in the field with them, as they like to kick and buck even when people are around. And I have an old stallion, which was my first horse my uncle got me. His name is Rooster, and he's 32 years old. This is my niece's favorite horse. She always wants to ride him, but I don't allow anyone to ride him, and I don't ride him anymore. He's very patient and kind, but he doesn't like anyone touching his back legs or his tail when you walk behind him. He will kick, but when he knows you're there, he doesn't mind being pet, as long as you approach him from the front. Overall, he's a great horse. She'll tease him with a lunging whip by tickling his back legs and his tail, trying to get him to kick. I've told her numerous times and I've warned her, but she still continues to do it behind my back. Well, I told her to go get Rooster out of the pasture and into his stall. She went to go get him, and I heard a scream in the barn. I get over there, and she was holding onto her leg, crying in pain, while Rooster ran back to the pasture. I asked her what happened, and she said Rooster had kicked her left thigh, and I asked her if she had touched Rooster on his back legs or his tail. She said she pushed him on his tail to get him in his stall, and that was when he kicked her and ran off. She started yelling about Rooster and how she doesn't want to be around him. I told her it's her fault. She provoked him, and for not listening to me after so many warnings. I told her that bruise on her leg is a lesson now to be careful around bigger animals, especially ones that can kick at any moment. She can walk it off, and she called her parents after. They called me and told me it was my fault for not supervising her and that they're gonna get her home. I told them everything, but they won't listen, and my sister-in-law told me I need to get rid of Rooster. I told her no and hung up. Now I'm wondering, am I the jerk? Not the jerk. 14 is old enough to take directions and warnings. You've told her several times not to do what she did. She didn't listen and continued to do it anyway. Rooster gave her a lesson and why she should listen to warnings and directions. I mean, if you keep telling a kid not to touch a stove because it's hot, and they don't listen and touch the stove anyway, are you going to throw the stove out? To me, this is the logic of the mother. OP. I've warned her so many times, and she always reassures me she won't do it. But for some reason, she would record teasing my horse Rooster. I even had friends who saw her do it. They told me not to let her around my horses anymore. I thought I could trust her, but now I do believe that she needs to go home. My parents don't like my boyfriend, so they gave me an ultimatum. I'm an only child, and my current boyfriend and I have been dating for 6 years, starting when I was 19 and he was 20. We met at junior college, where we started dating, and after that we went to different universities, but within an hour of each other. My parents met him early on by joining us at dinner. Everything seemed to go well. Then soon after, we went to his parents' house, who live about 2 hours from my parents, so I could meet his family. And after learning this, my mom told me how hurt she was that we didn't come to see them too. I expressed that this weekend was for me to meet his family, but it was clear that she felt almost betrayed. Fast forward, my parents invite me up to our cabin and my boyfriend joins. We take my car because it was already loaded with laundry, etc. After we arrive, my dad pulls me aside and pretty much quietly yells at me for how wrong it is that I drove and that we took my car. He's the man. He should be driving. Blah, blah, blah. This started everything going forward on a sour note. The cabin is in Tahoe. It gets cold in the winter, so my boyfriend wore a sweatshirt with his hood up during some of the time at the cabin. My parents to this day cite this as weird and rude, as well as a reason that they don't like him. As we continue our relationship, it's clear that my parents don't like him, but they can't really give me what would be a good justifiable reason. They'll say he's just not a good fit for the family. They don't tell me to stop dating him because they can't, I'm an adult, but they do tell me that I need to keep them and him separate. They don't want to really hear about him, and he's not welcome at their house or cabin. He's never cheated on me, mistreated me, he doesn't have any issues with substances, nothing like that a normal parent would see as a problem. Eventually, it became an ultimatum given to me by my parents. They'd tell me that if I continue to date him, eventually it will be either him or us, and you'll have to choose. Among other things, they would tell me that he'd never be an attorney, which is what he wanted to do, and insinuating that he probably wouldn't be much of anything at all. After undergrad, I started working at a financial firm. He graduated from undergrad at UC Berkeley and was accepted to law school across the country. We were always very serious about each other and made the decision to do long distance until he graduated and moved back to California. My boyfriend has since graduated from law school, moved home, and took the bar last month. He starts work this October and had a contract since last year. They've known about this as well. Now, 6 years into our relationship, I call my parents and tell them that we're going to be moving in together. About 20 minutes later, I get a text from my mom saying that she doesn't want to rain on my parade, but that this path excludes her and my dad from my future. That they love me, but they can't be in my life if I choose to be with my boyfriend. I told them I would never understand. Since then, they've sent me more and more text messages saying things like, "We feel like we're losing our daughter. This is heartbreaking," etc. And all the same time, including that this is my choice and my fault. I texted my parents that I thought my boyfriend and I should come over and talk, that texting about this kind of thing was stupid, but not to be patronized or belittled, and if it turned to screaming, then we would leave. My parents then replied that they wanted to see me face to face to talk, but that my boyfriend isn't allowed. My boyfriend even called my father the night of the initial "we can't be part of your life" text to try and talk or meet up and see if there was a way to talk through any legitimate concerns. My dad did not answer and did not respond until a week later, only to text him that they haven't really ever liked him, that he wants to work through it with me alone, and it's mine and my boyfriend's fault for not trying to address things earlier. Among other ridiculous reasons to not like my boyfriend were, "Berkeley isn't a man's college," my dad. One time in college, my professor lost my final exam, and when I found out via my final grade and was frantically calling her to figure out what happened, my parents told my boyfriend, "See, this is why we didn't want her to have a boyfriend in college." They found ways to blame him for everything. The only thing that ever had any merit was that he wasn't working yet. Well, this was because he was going to school to be a lawyer. Apparently, marrying someone who will make a lot of money is a bad thing. My boyfriend is the nicest, most calm and peaceful person ever, and he loves me more than anything. But apparently, their pride is more important than being wrong and accepting him. I guess I'm just trying to figure out if this is normal, or if it's as wrong as it feels for my boyfriend and I. Edit. Boyfriend, as well as my parents and myself, are of the same race. Somewhat similar financial status as well. No important details left out, I promise. I wanted objective feedback. Believe me, if there was more, my parents would make it known to me and I would have included it in the post. Mom was a career politician. Dad was a firefighter and a politician. I'm an only child, not close to aunts or uncles. Only surviving grandparent is Dad's mom. She was happy to hear that I had tried to get the four of us to talk. I now have to tell her that they declined the offer. She often tells me that she is very sorry that I've been put in this position. They won't compromise, so don't waste your time. I've come to the same conclusion. Me going alone is only their last-ditch attempt to bargain and manipulate my opinion, leaving him out so he can't speak or defend himself just so they can gang up on me and control the narrative. There has to be something else you're not telling us. OP. No, he's white and so are we. I promise it's the whole truth. Parents are conservative and they think anything that deviates from what they would do must be wrong. Boyfriend went to school for longer to do law. Dad thinks he should have started working at age 13, like he did. Boyfriend is definitely open-minded and moderate. Horrible, I know. How is your boyfriend with your parents? OP. Boyfriend is the best. He's never said a bad word about my parents either, despite how awful they've been to him. His parents are wonderful. His dad, who is not a touchy-feely person, even called me and explained how sad it is that my parents are doing this and that he and his wife love me and my boyfriend and support us. Update. After many more hurtful texts from my parents that said they can't accept my partner and that it doesn't matter if he's a good fit for me, if he's not a good fit for my family, then it's never going to work out. I went over in person to meet with them and pick up my legal documents. They made it clear that my boyfriend was not welcome and that this was a family matter. They needed to speak with me only about it. Clear manipulation, obviously. So I went home. I'm on my way. I know what I think and how I feel. I'm very sure of what I plan on saying. It was strange, walking into your parents' house and feeling like you're meeting strangers. Kind of felt like having a 26-year-long relationship and being broken up with via text, then having to go pick up your crap and memories from your ex's house, except that your ex is your parents. After about an hour of small talk, we got into the nitty-gritty conversation about the elephant in the room. A previous text that week had said, "We don't expect you to change your mind, we just want to talk." But it's clear that this in-person meeting was a last-ditch attempt to shake me from my reality and into theirs. They came at me from every angle. "He's not a man's man. I don't respect him. I hate him. He's taking away the most precious thing in our life. How could you not hate someone like that?" My dad was even physically threatening him. My mom was either agreeing or adding little tidbits and reminders of things she doesn't like about him. Some of which are things I mentioned in my previous post, like when I went to meet his family but didn't go see her and my dad too. Mentioning also that she doesn't like that I made the first move to talk to my boyfriend and not the other way around. You get the gist. It was all-out war on my boyfriend. They tell me I'm depriving them of a son-in-law. They say he's selfish for not breaking up with me years ago when he realized that my parents didn't like him. They even started blindly throwing out shots like, "I don't even know if he has any friends." Like, what? Of course you don't. You don't know anything about him because you've made me keep my relationship out of earshot for 6 years. But I digress. It ends up being a 3-hour conversation where I spoke for all of maybe 5 minutes with my heart rate at 150 the whole time. They also don't fail to mention a few other shining points, such as, "We knew you would put this on us. This is not an ultimatum. We are just reacting to your decision and choices," was their reply to me saying, "This is not my choice. This is an ultimatum you've given me, and neither my boyfriend or I want this." "We knew you would make us the bad guys, because we're not team boyfriend. Any of your friends and family who say we will come around or it will get better are lying to you and saying what you want to hear." They asked me why they should like or be impressed by my boyfriend. I told them various accolades. Dad replied with, "Education doesn't impress me." I told them how wonderful he was through some of the toughest times in my life, college, and how he supported and kept me sane when even my parents were coming down on me about how I wasn't doing enough. They said, "That's what any boyfriend would do." No, Mom and Dad, it's not. And the two of you certainly were making me feel worse the entire time. They said because my boyfriend's dad helped him get through school by paying his tuition that he's had everything in life handed to him. Dad said, "I think your mom is having an epiphany about who you're becoming," like I'm some monster. They said, "We feel like you're not listening to us," because I'm not just blindly agreeing to break up with my boyfriend. Dad said, "This kind of thing happens all the time," as if that makes it normal or justified. At the end, I have to break the news that in between all of the hurtful texts and prior to this meeting, my boyfriend and I signed a lease and moved in together. Nothing they were going to say was going to sway me otherwise. Even they said that. So we had taken the leap and made the move the weekend before this meeting. I was commuting about 20 to 30 minutes before the move, and my commute is the same after the move. Only difference is we now live in the same city that my boyfriend, new attorney with crazy early and late hours, works in. Believe me, I had all kinds of requirements prior to this move, It had to be safe, have a washer, dryer, safe parking, etc. And it's only for a year or two while we save money so we can buy a home. Contrary to my parents' belief, I'm capable of rational decisions. I tell them first that we signed the lease and where it is. Try and lighten the blow that I am outright disobeying them. They start going off about how, oh, of course, making it easy on him again. They saw me always going to my boyfriend's house as me catering to him, even though the only reason was because we were never comfortable being together at their house. Then, of course, he became essentially banished. So they see this move as me being some smitten teenage idiot, not about how this is a relationship with compromise. They tell me that my commute is going to be brutal and that I'm lying to myself if I think it's not. Again, I've already been doing it for a week. I know it's not any worse. It's even a prettier drive. But it's clear that I can't slowly ease into it and have to just rip off the band-aid because they're straight up just wrong and trying to convince me that I don't know what I'm talking about. So I say, I've already been doing it for a week. We moved in last weekend. They were just dumbfounded. Like, I thought you guys said you weren't planning on changing my mind, so why are you so surprised that I just went ahead and made my choice? My mom starts crying. My dad keeps saying, "You messed up, kid." It's about 10 p.m. at this point, so now that they know I have a slightly longer drive home, they're kind of sweeping me out the door so I can get home before it gets too late. My mom gives me this big sobbing hug. At this point, I've run out of tears. I was crying throughout the entire conversation, but at this point, I was just over it. My dad, who rarely even tells me that he loves me, gives me this awkward, desperate hug too that just kind of makes me roll my eyes. I get in the car and drive home, just totally exhausted and confused. Truthfully, they did a good job of, again, making me question my own thoughts and choices. But I get home and just start spilling everything that they said to my boyfriend. He's not surprised, but as I said in my last post, he remains Swiss in all of this and doesn't say anything crappy about them. He just holds me close and lets me vent. I still get very emotional about all of this. It's a fresh wound. I mourn the relationship I had with my mom and the one I will never have with my dad. My health is definitely suffering at the moment from all this stress, but I'm working on getting my mental health back, and I know my body will follow. Breaking the wheel is hard and terrifying. It's like being a crate-trained puppy forever and finally being allowed to go outside, but outside is unknown. The crate is all you've ever known, and even though you know the crate is confining and freedom is in front of you, it's also unfamiliar, uncertain, and frightening. You know what's behind you, and it's easy to want to run back to it. But no matter what's in front of you, it's better than the crate. The crate is not living for yourself, it's living for someone else. So go out and make your own life. I'm done, and I'm heartbroken. I have no one. I've been married for 15 years. I've known my wife since I was 8. We have 3 daughters together who are 17, 14, and 11. I'm tired of feeling like an outsider in my relationships with all of them. I'm just an ATM and a taxi service to my kids. My wife hasn't kissed me in 6 months. She's not said that she loves me in 1.5 years. No matter how much I communicate, try to plan anything or do anything, it's always shot down, forgotten, or dismissed. I don't get angry and I don't yell. I don't get physical. I like to splurge during birthdays and Mother's Day. I throw parties and give gifts and try to show how much I love them. I get a lukewarm thanks, and if I'm lucky, a side hug that lasts 0.01 seconds. This week was the breaking point. Father's Day. I woke up to an empty house. Odd. No note. Nothing was written on the calendar and nothing said beforehand. I send a text and I get back, "I took the girls out for a spa day. Don't wait up." Then nothing. Literally nothing. Dinner time comes around and they get home. How was their day? It was fine. I ask what they would like for dinner. Nothing. We already ate at one of my favorite restaurants. Cool, whatever. There's no mention of it being Father's Day. No I love you, no how are you, nothing. Fast forward to Wednesday, which was my birthday. Nothing. Literally again, nothing. I suggested plans. They get shot down. I suggested food. Nope, shot down. I ask about watching a movie, and they're all too busy. They just sat on their phones doing nothing. Now to Thursday night, I'm in bed. My wife is next to me. She rolls over and says in a crappy tone, "Oh, your birthday was the other day. I guess you expect to hook up." That broke something in me. Best of my memory of how it went down. I said, "No, I don't expect that. At this point, I don't expect anything anymore." Her, "What's that supposed to mean?" So I started asking her questions. "When was the last time we kissed each other? Like a week?" "Nope, it was in December and it was during her parents' holiday party." "When was the last time we hooked up? The beginning of the year?" Nope, wrong. It's been over a year. She was adamant that we did in February. I was dealing with my mom's health and her passing, so I said something like, "You may have hooked up with someone, but it wasn't with me." "When was the last time you said you love me?" "I say it all the time." "Not to me. Check your messages, and you don't say it to my face." "Well, you should just know I do." "When was the last time we went on a date?" Long pause. Her. "You're being unfair." Emotions turned on fully. I was crying and raising my voice at this point. I ask her how, and she can't answer. I asked her how wanting any sign of love from anyone in the house is unfair. If expecting anything for my birthday or Father's Day was unfair. She got a look on her face. "Yeah, you forgot that as well. I'm not an ATM, I'm not a taxi service, I'm not a punching bag." She asked why this was coming up out of the blue. It didn't. I've tried to talk to my family, and again to get dismissed or ignored. I brought up examples. I got an, "I didn't know you were serious. I didn't know it was such a big deal." I left saying something to the point of, "If you want to pretend that I'm invisible and don't exist, fine. You don't have to pretend anymore." I left the house at almost midnight on Thursday/Friday morning. Haven't been home since. I'm not sure what to do now. I'm finally sober enough to think, but I don't know what to do. First time drinking in over 15 years, by the way, and I'm not going to drink anymore. I love my family, but I can't keep this up. I don't know what more I can do. I think they would be happier without me. They already act like I don't exist. I can't be the one who is blamed for everything. If I truly am the problem, then me not being there should fix it. I can't do it anymore. I've tried to be a good provider, a good partner, and a good dad. Never missed an event for our kids. Never prioritized work. I kept good hours so I could see them more. Took on more responsibility to better our life and future, but it never is appreciated. It's never enough. I'm never enough. I only have one message from my wife. "I'm sorry for making you feel that way. We all love you and are here for you when you want to come home and talk." That's it. No other messages, no calls, nothing from the kids. I feel like if they really wanted me there, they would try reaching out more. All of the kids have their own phone. I don't know what she told them. I'm sure they heard me raise my voice. Me raising my voice would have definitely got their attention since I never do. I'm sure they heard me leave. I just don't know. Edit. Thanks everyone. I did not think anyone would care. You've given me some hope and advice that I'm going to look into. I'm going to try to figure things out more. I'm now 100% sober, so my mind is clearer. I'm going to start meeting with people on Monday and try to come up with options. Update. I have not been well, but I'm doing better. You guys have helped me a lot, and it's more than you know. I was able to get help through my work. They have resources for both therapy as well as legal counsel. But somehow, my boss found out I was reaching out and now won't leave me alone, but that's unimportant. I know she only has good intentions. So far, I like the new therapist I was able to get an appointment with. I thought there would be a long wait list. She recommended a family/spousal therapist as she focuses more on individuals. I talked to them as well. I got referred to divorce lawyers. I don't want to use them, but I had a talk with them and got an idea of what that route would be like. I'll be like 70% done for, but we are an at-fault state, so if it turns out she's cheating, I'll be okay-ish. My kids did reach out after a few days, worried. I told them I'm fine. I do truly love them and miss them, but I needed space and time. For the first time ever, I missed some of their extracurricular activities. I think that's what made them understand something was really wrong. Some other family members and friends noticed and started asking questions to all involved. My kids also mentioned how things were not the same without me around, and my wife was struggling. My wife reached out a few times just checking in, apologizing, giving me updates on things, and a couple of the times she asked about the 4th of July. We usually host a party and a barbecue. I said I wasn't interested, but I said that her and I needed to talk alone in person. That happened the weekend after the 4th. Apparently, she was planning the 4th as a surprise birthday party for me, after I had left, to make up for forgetting my birthday. But I ruined it as I didn't go and wasn't interested. When we met up to talk, she wasn't alone and brought the kids. I was happy to see them. They seemed happy to see me as well. But I asked for my wife and I to talk alone. When I pointed this out, she said the kids missed me and it was fine. We can talk with them here. I believe it was more of a manipulation move. I explained that this was another example of how my feelings or wants get ignored and cast aside. How I've been ignored for a while and how that is not right by anyone. She kept apologizing. I said while I acknowledge the apologies, I don't accept them. Most of the apologies, to me, feel like they're not real. Such as her initial apology of, "I'm sorry you feel that way," or they sound forced and just saying what she thinks I want to hear. Actions speak louder than those empty words. I also said that she's setting an example and expectations on how I'm treated and how our daughters will see me and treat me and their future relationships. As of now, no one should be treated this way. I think at this point, my wife regretted bringing the kids. My 14-year-old took my 11-year-old for some snacks, and my 17-year-old stayed. I flat out asked if there was anyone else, if she was cheating physically or emotionally or otherwise. She looked at me in shock. She said she would never do that. I asked why she was so adamant about us hooking up in February. Daughter had left at this point, when it's been way longer. Why has every part of our romance died within a year span from her part? She didn't know. We talked for an additional 20 minutes. I finally took out 2 folders I had with me. One was a separation document, not quite a divorce, but halfway to it. The other was therapist referrals for individuals and couples. I needed her to understand how serious I and the situation was. I asked her to look over each of them and ask herself what she wanted, but she had to make the decision and schedule the appointments. I explained that I'm done living this way, and if she chooses to stay with me, then there are going to be major changes occurring both in our relationship and at home. I love the woman I married, had kids with, and built a life together, but I don't know where she went. My kids came back, and my 11-year-old was mad I wasn't going back with them that night. I gave my wife time. She contacted me the next day, saying she's made appointments for herself and for her and I. She explained that she set up some bi-weekly individual therapy, and we have our first couples therapy early next month. The reason for the wait was so that she could establish and work on herself first. I've been using the gray rock method towards her since the initial incident per yours and my therapist's recommendations. So it's a work in progress. I'm not in as dark of a place as I was when I first posted. Some things are better now. I'm willing to put in the work, but it won't be one-sided. There is a plan moving forward, so that's a plus. I've been home for a week now, but I'm sleeping in a different room. Some changes have been put in place already, but time will be the real test. Am I the jerk for calling my husband inconsiderate for messing up our son's food order? I'm 44 female. My husband is 44 male. Our sons are 11 and 13. 11-year-old had some medical procedures today and asked for takeout from one of his favorite restaurants. I called my husband to ask him to order because I was driving. Husband ordered and picked it up. 11-year-old asked for his chicken and husband brings him a wing. 11-year-old starts crying because he eats drumsticks like every kid. Husband only ordered a wing and a thigh. 11-year-old has always eaten the same pieces, a drumstick and a breast to be specific. Husband got mad that I didn't tell him exactly what to order. I said, if you don't know what your 11-year-old eats, then you don't know him. For background, we order from this place every month or so for over a decade. We each get the same things every time. Husband and I order equally. He handles the food, cooking and takeout about 75% of the time. A little bit later, I told my husband that I don't want to fight, but this is exactly what I'm talking about when I say he's not considerate. That all 3 of us feel like he doesn't care about us when he does this kind of stuff. I told him that 13-year-old said, Dad always forgets the important stuff, when he found out why 11-year-old was crying. We all feel like he doesn't care when he forgets basic stuff about us. He dismissed me, saying that doesn't mean I don't care about you. I said, we feel like you don't care, and you can't tell us how to feel. I've come to realize over the last year or so that my husband is inconsiderate, not just forgetful. Other examples, he will eat their last of a food or a snack and not ask if they want it. I had a leg injury this year, and a cast in a walker, and he left things in the walkway even after I pointed out there was stuff in my way and I can't get around it. He had to take care of 13-year-old's birthday cake because of my injury and didn't get candles. 13-year-old was upset, and husband got mad that no one appreciates that he got the cake. We've been together for 23 years, and he's never gotten me a cake, let alone put candles in it. His birthday is 6 weeks before mine. I always get him a cake or special dessert, put candles in it, and sing happy birthday with the kids. So, am I the jerk for calling my husband inconsiderate over a minor thing like messing up a food order? Not the jerk. This incident is obviously bringing up a whole lot of unresolved issues for you, but that doesn't make you wrong or unfair. If you're not letting your kids know how you feel about your father's forgetfulness, then it really is alarming that they are also noticing it. I'd suggest getting some family therapy or in the very least couples counseling, because it's especially alarming that he's dismissing any culpability at all. This sounds like my ex-husband. Ate the last banana when I specifically said, make sure you don't eat the last banana tomorrow as our kid with braces needs it for morning tea at school. I'll get some on my way home from school tomorrow. You're obviously undertaking the entire mental load for your family. Kids liked it when we got divorced. Dad tools them for waffles, bowling, and the cinema every second weekend. They had a routine and a few supplies with me, but all good. They still live with me while attending college. Rarely see his selfishness now. Everyone sucks here. Stop focusing on chicken and realize you have a much bigger issue. You and your husband clearly have a communication issue which neither of you are comfortable dealing with like adults. Your son is 11, not 2. I like wings, but if I have to eat a drumstick, I'll eat it. Your son falling apart over not getting the piece of chicken he wanted makes him sound like a spoiled, entitled brat. Stop enabling this behavior. The family situation is toxic, but it isn't only your husband who's causing it. Babysitter's revenge. I was young, maybe 15 or so, and would pick up odd babysitting gigs for extra money. I took a night for a household that was on my paper route. They asked me to be there on a Saturday for 8:30, and I arrived a few minutes early. The parents were still getting ready, and they asked me to watch their kids while they prepared to head out. They left the house at about 9:15. Before they headed out, the wife gave me some very specific instructions. I could have a snack, 2 Oreos on the counter, nothing else. She said she poured a glass of milk for me and left it in the fridge. It was right next to the plastic milk jug with a piece of tape on it showing the level. She told me she'd check it when she got back, and if I took any extra milk, I would have to answer for it. The kids were okay. Those people like their milk, don't they? The kids were okay, went to bed without any fuss, and the parents returned home at 12:20. Mom paid me for 3 hours about 10 minutes after they arrived. Excuse me, but this isn't right. I got here before 8:30, and now it's almost 12:30. That's 4 hours, not 3. We didn't leave until 9:15, and we got home at 12:15. I'm only paying you for 3 hours. But I was watching the kids from 8:30. That doesn't matter. We were home and you weren't in charge. We were. I took the money and rode my bike home. A couple of weeks later, they did pretty much the same thing. 2 things are important. First, the wife was a neat freak. I'm guessing now she had OCD. Everything was lined up perfectly. One of the kids spilled his drink, and I was looking for some paper towels. The cleaning supplies under the sink were perfectly lined up. Same with the pantry. Every jar and can was in a row with the label facing directly to the front. Second, this was in the mid-70s, and all canned food had paper labels. So, the 3rd time they called me in to babysit, they were late leaving again, and I knew that I was going to get shortchanged for the time I was there. I was steaming. So I went into the pantry and tore the labels off each and every can. All of them. She had a shelf for Campbell's soup, another for canned veggies, another for canned fruits, and I scrambled the unlabeled cans. When they got home, sure enough, she tried to short me. You know what? Keep your money. I don't want it, and I'm never babysitting for you again. As of today, I'm stopping delivering your newspapers as well. So if you want to read the paper, you're going to have to go buy it at the corner store. I stormed out. I wish I could have seen the expression on her face when she opened the pantry door and saw the shelf after shelf of bare metal cans. My wife won't let me attend my favorite band's concert. Context. My favorite band is coming into town this week, and we've been planning on going to this concert for a long time. The band, my wife introduced me to, and it's now my favorite band. She takes pride in that and wants us to experience the concert together. She also loves them a lot. Here's the problem. My wife is 36 weeks pregnant. She doesn't and probably can't go to the concert because of the loud music, the crowds, etc. When I say that I still want to go, she's furious and frequently cries about it. She is pregnant, so I understand the crying. I can't help but feel as if she's being selfish, and just because she can't enjoy the concert doesn't mean I can't as well. What do you guys think? Am I the jerk? Edit. Okay, this blew up. I just want to add further information. First of all, I see everyone getting upset with me. I understand, but please take into consideration, this is the reason I came to this subreddit. Not because I feel as if I'm in the right. I'm asking because I wanted to seek the opinions of others. I tried to sell the tickets, but no one has bought them. I put them up for sale 2 weeks ago, and the tickets totaled to $600. I asked all of our friends, and they're all busy, so I didn't want them to go to waste. I said we planned it for a long time. That is the case. Since it's our first pregnancy, she didn't know how she would feel, and now she isn't comfortable going. I also want to add, we planned this with a group of friends, not just us. I didn't feel the need to add this information because personally I didn't think it would blow up. For those of you who are asking, this band is very niche and hasn't toured in years, especially since lockdown. She isn't worried about preterm labor, just upset that I would go without her. You're the jerk. Your wife is more important than a concert. Put her first and sell the tickets to someone else, and buy her some flowers as an apology. You're the jerk. Be serious. How do you think she feels knowing that you're going to go to a concert that she would enjoy but can't go to? Besides, this late in the pregnancy, she definitely needs your support and assistance. What if something goes wrong while you're at the concert? At this point, I would be putting all activities that place you out of reach on hiatus. She's sacrificing her entire body and mental health to grow your child. She can't drink, eat certain foods, or even sit comfortably. How have you contributed to the growth of this baby? You haven't. How about you make a small sacrifice and stay home? You're the jerk. You're the jerk. You can't be serious. If I were her, I'd seriously be calling a divorce lawyer ASAP. What kind of partner would leave his pregnant wife at home to go to a concert that you knew she wanted to go to, but can't because she's pregnant? You sound like a horrible spouse, and I guarantee you'll be an even worse father than you are husband if you're selfish enough to even think about doing something like this. I hope she sees this as the major red flag that it is and dumps your sorry butt pronto. Why she would have a kid with someone like you is beyond me. Not the jerk. You and your wife both deserve to do things every now and then that you enjoy, even if the other one can't come along for whatever reason. If I were pregnant, which I haven't been in a long time, and my husband wanted to go to a concert that I couldn't attend, I'd tell him to have a good time and bring me back a souvenir. Edit. You can insult me however you'd like, but why on earth would you attack my husband over this? He was the best man I ever knew, and he went home to be with the Lord 12 years ago. He'd be rolling over in his grave if he saw how ridiculous some of you are. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know. If Reddit Boy tried to go to a concert without me, I'd celebrate. Very rarely do I get a moment away from this guy. Free pumpkin pies for everyone. This is a story from many years ago when grocery stores were closed on Christmas and Thanksgiving. I worked for a small chain of grocery stores in the Mid-Atlantic in the deli. Santoni's, shout out. A day before Thanksgiving, the bakery manager asked if anybody from our department would be willing to stay and work all night, just baking pumpkin pies for orders. We were open the day before Thanksgiving till 4, then closed Thanksgiving. I volunteered as I was a college student on Thanksgiving break. I came to work that night and was left a note about temps, timing, and packaging, but no numbers or quantities. This made me nervous, so I called the manager at home and said, "How many pies do you want me to bake?" She told me to keep baking until she came in, and I questioned that, asking, "How many pies exactly do you want me to make?" She obviously was irritated and told me that I didn't need to worry about how many, just keep cooking until she came in at 5. Okay, cue malicious compliance. I loaded a 6-wheeler cart with frozen pies, put them on trays, and started baking. As the pies were baking, I prepped racks ahead of time and folded boxes while pies cooled. I was a logistical savant. Everything went perfectly, and I was a machine operating at optimal efficiency. By the time she came in at 5, I had cooked every pumpkin pie in her freezer. She lost it. "What the heck is going on? What am I supposed to do with all these pies? You cooked over 400 pies, and I only have orders for 100. The store manager, hearing the commotion, came over and asked what was going on. She said, "She cooked every pie we have in the store, even the Christmas ones. What am I supposed to do with all these pies?" He asked, "Why did you cook all the pies?" And I told him, "She told me to." He asked her if that was true, and she said, "No, well, I told her keep cooking until I got here, but nobody's ever cooked that many before. I didn't even think it would be close." "Then this is on you," he replied and walked away. The best part was that since we were closed the next day, the employees were allowed to take all the leftover bakery items home with them. I took home 10 pumpkin pies and multiple bags of bread and rolls. Every other employee in the store was very, very grateful. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard. Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.